Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. We're mixing it up a little bit with a barbecue-specific episode this time and bringing on the CEO and owner of Meat Church. He was a contestant on Barbecue Pitmasters off TLC. Been a number of TV shows and other media outlets that have interviewed him or had him cook for them. A multitude of pro barbecue competitors that compete with his products and are incredibly successful in doing so. He's done personal cooks for a host of A-list celebrities. He's intertwined with both Jack Arnold, shout out to Jack, and David Andrews, shout out to David, in the kind of web of friends that we all associate with, that we got to know each other from. Most importantly, he uses a rib rub for aftershave and can outcook you with a fucking easy bake oven. Please welcome Matt Pittman of Meat Church.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you coming. I know, in the grand scheme of all the guests I've had on, you certainly live in my neck of the woods. Having said that, it is still Texas, which means it can be hours away and it's considered right down the fucking street, which it is. But I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy, slinging the rubs and sauces and cooking for country music stars and all the different things. I would like to again say thank you for making the time and get right into our lightning round, which is going to be some questions of absurdity if you're ready for that.
Let's do it.
What is your take on the global geopolitical implications of mass genocide in sub-Saharan Africa as it relates to our foreign policy?
The good thing about being a barbecue guy is I'm one of the stupidest guys you've ever talked to, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I had to throw that one at you. Most of our guests have, a pretty hefty fucking opinion of something like that, but I wanted to make you as uncomfortable as possible.
Perfect.
I am going to put you in the hot seat a little bit. What's the most overrated barbecue joint? Now I'm going to ask that you talk shit about somebody.
Wow. That is a lightning round right there. Man, that's a tough one.
Are there a lot of them, do you think? Do you think a lot of them are, no pun intended, but smoke blown?
Well, yeah, there's this legendary in Texas list called the Texas Monthly Top 50.
Yeah.
And so, if you get on that list, it's a pretty big deal. So, there's certainly like really well-known ones out there. And now there's all these new ones popping up that are like super good.
Yeah.
So it's, now you look at that list and you're like,
how the fuck are they on there?
Yeah, how are they on there? So, not to throw shade, but I'll answer your question. So the last list that came out, the current one, the last list, there's a place in Fort Worth right down the street from me, Longoria's, good people, great people. And I went and had it and I was like, how are they on this list?
Yeah.
And they're not on the current list. So,
yeah.
I say I'm not in the business of telling you what tastes good. You get to pick what you want and what, so it's, that's definitely kind of political.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, to me, it's, there's so few people that are willing to call people out that, that's a lot of why Mic Drop has gotten to where it's gotten, is because there's not really a filter on shit like that. And, to me, there's plenty of people that think, my online training sucks, as an example. Or that I'm a shitty trainer, or what the fuck do I know about anything, or whatever, which everybody's entitled to their opinion. However, that's their right to fucking say, you know what, I don't think you have any business fucking training dogs. Okay, but I should also be able to say, yeah, I think your restaurant fucking sucks.
Right.
I don't think you have any business cooking fucking barbecue. But, and I think in our society, there's too little of that. There's so many people that are so fucking worried about offending somebody or being like, well, you don't like my stuff, or whatever. It's like, yeah, not everybody likes everything and whatever, but
getting a little soft.
Yeah, that's the fucking truth. When's the last time you fucked up a cook for somebody, like where you were in charge of fucking running it, and it wasn't just you in your backyard, like you went to cook for somebody and you're like, holy shit, I screwed this up?
That happens more than you know.
Can you tell? Like, are they honest with you? Like, man, what the fuck?
Well, yeah. So I did a barbecue school a couple weeks ago for 100 people, and it was off-site. And so, I get everything cooked and take it there. And there's nothing worse than my buddy Corey walking up to me and saying, that brisket was dry as shit. And we got to serve it to all these people. And I'm like, well, go buy some beef broth and dredge it or something. So, 2 weeks ago.
No shit. So it happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me. I know for like if I'm at my parents' house or I'm out of town at a client's house or something, and they are making something or they want my opinion. Not that I get paid to fucking barbecue, but obviously it's a big part of who I am and what I do. I've gotten into it pretty hard over the last decade, but same thing. Like it's hard to cook not in your own fucking spot, like, I mean, even if you're cooking on the same type of grill, like if you're cooking on a Primo or an egg or a fucking, a pellet smoker that you have the exact same one, it's still not the same. And it's hard to do sometimes. But what is your favorite competitor's product?
Man, that's actually a really hard question because, like I'm most known for our seasoning. And so it kind of depends on how you like, what is a competitor? And I've always said, I'm not going to try to have every seasoning for every cook. So there's things that I won't have, but when I go to like a big competition and I see the biggest of names using something else, and there's a lot of them out there, not to skirt the question, I'm like, oh, well, I want that. Even though I target backyard, we're all backyard guys, right? I'm not just targeting a competition guy. And so, there's a few out there that I look at and I'm like, dang, that stuff's really good. Or maybe things I don't sell. Like I don't sell barbecue sauce, which I think I'm, maybe losing money at this point. So I've got, a buddy of mine in Oklahoma that makes comparable stuff and he's got sauce and his sauce kills it. And I don't have sauce. And so I think, probably losing money not doing it. So there's a lot of good barbecue sauces that I'm envious of. Is
there one rub that you can think of that you're like, yeah, it's a good fucking rub, or that, that you used to use before you did it that, is something that you think is adequate?
Yeah, I've got a friend, Jess Prowse, down in Austin, and she's got a red rub that a lot of my rubs have sugar in them because I think that makes a really balanced barbecue rub. But sometimes I cook something and I don't want any sweet on it. Yeah. Right. And so I'll grab her red rub and use it. Yeah. And I'm like, man, I wish I had one that was more savory like that. Yeah. And so the bad thing is it's my kid's favorite rub.
Well, to me, it's really fucking cool, I think, to ask a guy like you questions like that and you be honest, be like, yeah, there's this other rub that I really like. And one of the things that drives me nuts in the dog industry is the amount of shit talking that takes place. I can't imagine barbecue's any different, but, it's just like, to me, I do my damnedest to not, talk shit about other people. Like if I don't have anything good to say, I just won't fucking talk about it, at least not publicly, but on the same token, like if somebody legitimately needs to be called out, I'm happy to do that. But I think, just your honesty is refreshing, I guess, is my point.
Well, I get it right in my face right now with social. I mean, I'm out there on social media, right? And so I trigger people a lot, even though I try to stay pretty neutral in just what we share. Yeah. But, I triggered 2 or 3 groups of people in the last 10 days, posted a pair of Nike shoes. Yeah. That were a gift from a friend. And that was one thing, anytime I post like Yeti stuff, I trigger these dumbasses that think that
Arctic's better or whatever,
or people that think they don't support hunters and the NRA. And
I gotcha.
So you gotta be ready for that.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the social media is obviously a big double-edged sword. I mean it's an amazing tool to for assholes like us to reach millions of people. On the same token, it invites a lot of fucking bullshit too. But what's the most non-traditional food that you've barbecued? Like, something that's not traditionally barbecued that you've done that most people would never think to smoke.
Man, so I get asked that a lot. And what's the craziest thing you've barbecued or non-traditional? And the thing with me, I smoke everything, and so that's kind of how I got into this. I had a Big Green Egg early on, and I love the smoke flavor of anything. And so I'm not just making this up, but you start with brisket and ribs and pork shoulder and all that, but I'm out there cooking freaking cookies on it. And so I would say probably one of the most non-traditional right now is I use a lot of smoke elements in drinks, cocktails.
Really?
So yeah, like I love to make an old fashioned. You make smoked simple syrup, or you smoke the orange that you're going to shave to squeeze into it. You can make like a smoked like Tito's lemonade. And so I like smoke elements and everything, probably more than most people. Like I could go from appetizer to cocktails to dessert and have smoke in all of it and love it. So I try to see if you can smoke anything I cook. And honestly, my goal is to not use my oven.
Yeah. The one thing for me that sometimes I find it tough living in Texas and, at this time of year, July, August, is, standing out there and not using your oven when it's 106 fucking degrees, but I guess that's the labor of love that is barbecue, right? Yeah. What is your favorite, if you can only pick one actual restaurant barbecue joint, what's your favorite one you've been to or your go-to?
You're getting the tough questions early. So, man, there's a lot, but I think that Bodacious in Longview on Mobberly, because there's two in Longview, currently number 4 on the Tex Monthly Top 50. It's a friend of mine, Jordan Jackson. It's a legendary place because his father-in-law, Roland, started it and is just kind of a genius in barbecue in the 70s and passed away, I think, last year. Jordan kind of resurrected it as a classically trained chef, but does barbecue, and he's super creative. Yeah. And so you can go in and just be like, hey, dealer's choice, give me what you want to give me. And he'll give you some sort of crazy sausage. Like, since he's East Texas, he brings in like boudin flavor from Louisiana and makes this ridiculous boudin that he'll put brisket in. And you're like, dude, that's the best I've ever had. He could, cook whole hog for the first time and make you he made these whole hog gyros last year and they were amazing. So like he made beef ribs and shaved truffle on them, fancy, So I think his stuff is just like super legit, and it's kind of off the beaten path. It's not in Dallas, it's not in Fort Worth. You got to drive to get to it, but every bite you have is going to be just like unbelievable.
So that's interesting that Bodacious is a significant size chain, but that one is completely different from the rest of them, pretty much.
So yeah, and that's what you have to tell people, and it was a big deal a couple years ago when he made that top 50 list, because it's like, whoa, you just put a chain on there. But I have to tell people that no, it's technically a chain because the family owns all these other ones and those folks buy their rubs and they taught them how to make barbecue. But Jordan has the name on the door, but he's doing his own thing. I mean, it does roll up to the family. His wife is Roland's daughter, so it is technically in the chain, but does his own thing, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah, damn, that's pretty slick.
Like, it's like you would go there, and I'd ask you, have you ever had a better meal? Like, it's that good.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Well, fuck. Now, that's not that far from here. Now,
you gotta go.
Now I know where I need to go. Is there a like for the more novice or lay person listener? Is there a best YouTube channel to subscribe to that all things barbecue related?
Starting next week, Meat Church.
Is that right? All right. Fucking A. Which should probably be out by the time this is released.
Yeah. So we have a channel, but we have one really good video on it. And we just shot 2 weeks ago. We said, all right, it's going to be a focus now. So brought a crew over, shot 3 videos, and the goal is to release every other week. So we're making it like a disciplined effort. And I'm going to start with all the core stuff. So we just did a 3-part series on brisket, a trim, a cook, a burn ends, whatever. And we'll go through the core stuff first and then do unique stuff. But the one I watch that a lot of people like is How to Barbecue Right. Buddy of mine, Malcolm Reed, he's got probably 700,000 likes. He came down and taught a collaborative class with me about 5 weeks ago at my house. And he's definitely YouTube famous. I looked at my kids and I said, hey, I'm bringing a YouTuber. And it didn't fit their bill, but for 7 and 8 year old. But that guy has cooked everything. He's to the point of, he's probably on his 19th brisket video. Oh, I've never cooked it on this, so let's try that. But it's really cool.
What was his name again?
Malcolm Reed. It's How to BBQ Right.
Oh, okay. Well, there you have it. Last but certainly not least, the one question that every motherfucker that comes on this show gets asked: what is your morning routine?
I wake up and I grab my phone and I look at my social media because I'm absolutely addicted to it.
No shit.
I got to know how much it grew the day before. Who did I trigger? Like I said, I deal with that, and then I open a Monster, drink the Monster, crack open my Mac, and then I personally handle a huge portion of our wholesale business still. So like if Buc-ee's is ordering, I'm the one doing it. And so I handle all that and make sure the administrative side of the business is good. And I try to get all that done before my family wakes up.
So what time do you typically get up?
5:45.
And do you not eat anything the first few hours?
Well, unfortunately, my wife has me on this damn keto diet right now, so I'm in intermittent fasting mode, so I don't get to eat till the afternoon right this second.
So that, hence the Monster, right? The Monster's the one thing.
That's right. So it worked out good. I was like, I can't do this. I'm like, oh, that sugar, whatever, it works. So
yeah. No, I'm right there fucking with you. I'm a coffee guy in the morning, but same kind of principle. I usually don't eat till the afternoon either, but all right, so before we get into kind of the meat and potatoes, I do want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our sponsor, which is Origin Labs. makers of Jocko's products as well as their own supplements. They also do boots and jeans, which are pretty fucking awesome. I have some of them now, as well as some other stuff coming down the pipe. But great sponsor, great people. Love what they do and their support for Mic Drop. So again, shout out to them for being our sponsor, as well as teamdog.pet. If you have a dog, fucking sign up for teamdog.pet. And while I'm on that, just real fucking quick for everybody that's listening, I get message after message after message asking for tips and free advice on dog training. And I get it. That's what I do. And I understand that comes with the territory. Having said that, do not ask me a fucking question if you're not a Team Dog member, plain and simple. And if you are, do it in the forums. That's not my full-time job, is to give out free training advice on Instagram. So just stop doing it. Become a member, ask in the forums, and I will interact with you there as a customer. So that's all I'm going to say on it. Moving back into why we're here. Where are you from? Tell us a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up.
So I was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and my family, both sides of my family, half comes from Georgia, half comes from Alabama. So they met in Tennessee, and so I was there till I was 13. So I, grew up on the sweet pork kind of stuff, and then parents divorced. Dad came to Texas, and I followed him here. So
how old were you when that happened?
So they divorced when I was 8, but at around 13, I moved, came down for junior high, and was coming down for a summer, and then never went back.
How big of a transition was that? Obviously, I mean, a lot of people that are not in the South or Mid-South, Tennessee and Texas probably seems like it's the same spot. Obviously, there's a difference. How big of a transition was that for you moving from Tennessee to here?
It probably messed me up pretty good now that I look back, because I thought, it was funny now that I look back, it was opposite of what I thought, I believe, but I was like, man, Texas was like, so I now know I grew up total redneck, right?
Yeah.
And love it. But when I came to Texas, I don't know what it was, but I remember my dad walking me into school to sign me up, and I said, get me in honors classes and get me away from these guys, and my dad was super pissed off. But I quickly realized through pretty much hazing that, I was the one that was a little behind the curve, but it was real different. Totally different than what I was used to. And I had no family down here other than my dad and my brother, so it was total culture shock.
Is there something specific that sticks out as being like, holy shit, I wasn't expecting this culture shock wise?
Well, it's specific to us. I mean, we moved to Mineral Wells when we came down here, and we moved into a log house that had no AC. I mean, I had a window unit where I came from, but I don't even think we had that when we got here. And our washer and dryer were in a building outside of the house, and my mom, our stepmother, was like, yeah, so scorpions could drop from the rafters and you just kind of knock them off. I was like, what the hell's a scorpion? And I'm scared to death of this crap.
In Tennessee?
I moved from kind of being I lived in the city in Tennessee, but my grandfather in Alabama had a farm, so I spent a lot of time on the farm. But when I moved to Texas, I was totally rural. And so my life went from, I had Mineral Wells wasn't a big town, it's a piece of crap town.
Yeah.
So
shout out to Mineral Wells.
Yeah, my brother's the mayor there now, so love it.
No shit.
But yeah, so it was just different, and it wasn't necessarily specific to Texas, but way different.
Just a big wake-up call. What, where did barbecue first kind of come into your life as a child in terms of what you remember in relation to it impacting you?
All I remember as a kid was that families grilled, right? I remember there being a grill and hamburgers and hot dogs. Nobody doing slow barbecue at all whatsoever. I know growing up there, we went to eat barbecue. And like I said earlier, I ate a lot, pork ribs and pulled pork. And that was really my recollection. My cooking recollection comes from my granny, who just cooked giant Southern meals, but not barbecue.
Yeah. So does that continue to influence some of how you barbecue? Is incorporating some of that into it?
Well, what I incorporate into it really now is like my granny's whole thing was taking care of people. You come home from church and there's this giant table just like filled with food, right? And I'm like, how did you cook 19 sides in 45 minutes?
With one fucking oven.
Exactly. Yeah. This little bitty kitchen. But anyway, I think just the taking care of people, like everybody loves eating, right? Yeah. You're happy when you're eating, and our lives center around food. I'm not trying to be cheesy, but think about how much time you sit around the table, right? And so it's the community. That's why we call it Meat Church, the communal aspect of it. So I take that from it. It wasn't anything specific on cooking. I mean, I do love Southern, like I'm a comfort food guy. So I'll fried chicken and mashed potatoes you to death 8 days a week. Yeah. I take that from it, but not no style or anything like that.
Yeah. You know, one of the interesting points you made is, you know, and I concur 100%. I don't find any cheese factor whatsoever in the bringing together of people that in no other fucking aspect of their life would interact with each other. Barbecue and food, you know, specific to barbecue brings some pretty crazy fucking people together, you know, and I know, you know, I don't do it for a living. It's totally just a geeked out hobby of mine, but you know, I've met people, you know, just because of it, you know, or even just talking a little bit on, you know, bits and pieces here. I mean, what's interesting of all the hundreds of thousands, or I mean, at this point, millions of listeners, a lot of them are into barbecue from all different walks of life. And just the little mentions that I've made in different episodes is why you're sitting here. There's been enough people that have been like, hey, do a fucking barbecue episode or whatever. So it's pretty neat, whether it's NFL football players like, you know, David Andrews or Jack out of North Carolina and the crew that he runs with, or, you know, whatever. It's a really neat aspect. And did you ever watch that show? I can't remember. Anthony Bourdain's No Limits, I think.
Yeah.
You know, to me, that's a good example of all over the fucking planet. I mean, you look at the role that food and gathering with people that you know and love, whether it's family, friends, whatever, and sharing, eating, it's a huge part of our lives that I think a lot of people either don't realize or don't take advantage of. But I think it's a really, really neat element of our society. When was the first time you actually started barbecuing growing up?
So really college. I mean, I grilled through, you know, I grilled actually into high school, being in college, got into grilling a little, nothing crazy, right? I was young, didn't have money, whatever. And the barbecue aspect started in college. So, you know, going and having barbecue in Texas, having Central Texas salt and pepper beef barbecue and being like, whoa, that's extremely different than what I had. It was like a head popping moment. Yeah. And then that's when the bug bit me. And then I had a couple college buddies that friend of mine, Pete, his dad had a huge offset that his dad had made out of Louisiana prison labor, and he'd be like, "Come over Saturday, we're gonna barbecue." Yeah. But when he said that, he meant like we're throwing 45 racks of ribs on, like huge. And so that's really how I got into it. Yeah.
Well, and so one of the things that I didn't know about you until, you know, just a little bit, we were talking before we started recording, you know, of kind of what you did, you know, most of your adult life or for a lot of it, that didn't have shit to do with barbecue. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, graduating high school, going to college, and what was your goal or your MO during that part of your life, and what were you doing?
So, you know, in high school, like junior high and high school, I'd always been an entrepreneur, and I've talked a lot about this lately, but I used to, in junior high and early high school, I used to buy like bicycles and tear them down and repaint them and sell them on like a first Monday. And then when I got to Texas, I don't know how the hell this started, but I used to make suckers that we sold at school. People were big into making candy. Like I said, I don't know where that came from. Yeah. And then like bracelets and stuff. And so I did little things to make money. So I always trying to be an entrepreneur, made t-shirts in college, and I always thought I'd have a t-shirt website that like sold funny shirts, but I just never got it going. And anyway, I nobody in my family had graduated college. And so it was in my head that, all right, I did good in high school, got some scholarship offers. Like I'm going to go, you know, do what smart kids do and get a degree. So in and out of school in 4 years, got a finance degree at UTA. Cause I've always been kind of a numbers guy. And my senior year, one of my accounting professors, he just told us, he said, you know, the new hot degree right now is computer science. And I love computers. My dad had bought me one. Well, I was one of the first kids that had a computer that I knew. So I was into it, but I had it in my head again, I'm going to get in and out in 4 years. And so I'm not going to go change my major. Got out of school, went over to SMU and took some Microsoft classes to get my foot in the door to do IT. And so right after college, I did that. And so I was working for Bank of America in college. And so from there until the end of this past year, I've always been in financial services, but I did IT. So most recently, 21 years into working, was vice president of technology operations. So infrastructure, data centers, hardware, your laptop, a help desk. So that's what I did during the day, and barbecue was a hobby.
Oh shit. So, I mean, obviously that being that skilled at that's got to pay huge dividends in running your own business, right?
Yeah.
During that entire process, I guess, or actually before that, you mentioned scholarships. Did you play, you were good at some sport, or was it all academic?
Academic. Yeah. I went on most of my tuition was paid for. So I was on my own. So I was able to get by without loans. So I got out of school with no debt, so I kind of went where the money was basically.
Yeah. You didn't wait for the government to bail you out, huh?
No.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing, to spend that amount of time in that environment. It's a little, contradictory in terms of what most people I think would expect. Looking at where you're at now and just judging a book by its cover, like, I'm assuming that surprises most people.
It's super interesting if you followed along with me to some of the things I do. If you watch reactions, so I did a private gig a couple weeks back, and so it was a private barbecue school, and so it was for a company and their clients. And the CEO didn't know me. One of his marketing guys booked it. And I can tell you, when I first met him, he was totally judging me like I was the dumb barbecue guy, right? And to be honest with you, I don't give a shit because I'm like, I retired at 43 years old and I wake up and I may make barbecue, I may drink beer, and I get paid. Yeah. So not too bad. But by the time the school was over, the guy was like holding up his phone, swiping through pictures of his house, saying, "Could you come to my house in Houston and do this?" And he was like totally in. Another guy that I've known for a long time, I ran into him at a restaurant, and he actually said, he just like shrugged his shoulders and was totally judgmental, like, "Well, I guess if you want to make barbecue every day." And I said, "Well, I might make barbecue or I might not, but I don't go to the office every day like you do." And just kind of shut that down. But it really I 110% made the right decision, but having this very structured corporate life, like what people do when they grow up, definitely has paid dividends, but I don't miss it at all. Yeah. I did it, I guess, kind of an opposite way. Like a lot of people have this idea and they try to make it go earlier in their life. And that was what was hard for me. I tell people I didn't figure this meat church thing out in my 20s when I could have just quit my $35,000 a year job. That wasn't the case. I mean, I was at a very lucrative job for a company that we had taken public 18 months prior, had stock, wasn't getting rich off of it, but was doing really well. And it was, my wife's whole perspective was, it wasn't what Meat Church was doing. It was, why the hell would you ever leave that? Like, we have 4 kids and 2 are in college, and that's like the most amazing job. It was a career job. Yeah. So why would you leave that? So it was really interesting going through. I mean, it took me almost a year to convince her. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm right there with you. I can certainly relate to being in that position. I am curious, like throughout the whole time while you were in corporate America, that is it 21 or 24 years?
21 years.
21 years. Was there a certain point during that 21 years that was kind of a light switch or like a crossover where you're like, you know what? Yes, like barbecue has gotten this big in my life where I know I want to do something with it. Was there a point in that 21 years where that distinction was made?
So, I mean, not in the beginning, not in the middle, because at that, you're out of school, you're fresh, you're meeting your future wife, you're focused on getting a promotion. And then I think corporate America sucks the entrepreneurial life out of you because you're so focused on the job at hand and getting busy with life and having kids. And then honestly, the other thing is Meat Church is only 5.5 years old. And so it wasn't intending to be a business, right? Like we went on this TV show, took 2 of our rubs on the show that we made. And my wife asked me, she said, "What's going on the show going to mean for you?" And I said, "I don't know." I'm like, "We don't have a barbecue business. Like if we had a restaurant, it'd probably be like 6 months of business, but I have no idea." But obviously took the rubs on the show for a reason, and they showed them. And so by the time the show aired, we had a website with those on it and the shirt and hat we wore, and we sold a few things. And we launched like a really cool hobby, right? So in the night I could go see who bought stuff and we could ship it out, and it was kind of cool. So 0 to 5.5 years, high level hobby the first year, hobby the second year, but like made pretty good money. And then the third year I was like, there's a business here. Now I didn't know if it was like leave my job business, because I kept thinking it would go down. Our numbers have always increased, and I was like, at some point it's going to dip, and just being skeptical. So year 3, beginning of year 3, I knew there was some sort of business there. And then year 4, I became personally in my head 100 as a businessman. I was like, I'm going to do this. Now, no one else thought I was going to do that. Yeah. But anything I ever go do, it's like you can ask my wife, like anything I do, I'm 110%. I woke up one day and said, I want to start doing triathlon. And 3 years later, I did a full Ironman. So I'm not going to half-ass anything.
You did?
Yeah.
No shit. Where at?
Panama City. So
God damn. What? Yeah. Do you remember your time?
that was before I got good. Well, it's nothing to brag about.
Was it sub 10 hours?
Hell no.
Sub 12?
Hell no. Yeah, I was right at 13. So I call it the respectable time for having 2 kids.
No, I mean, let's not bullshit. For those of you listening that don't know what the Ironman in terms of length is, it's 2.4 fucking miles of swimming, followed by 112 miles of biking, and then running a marathon after that, which is 26.2 miles. To me, any motherfucker that even finishes doing that, my hat goes off to. I mean, I've never done one. I've done a half, and it was a dick dragger. But to me, just completing one is an enormous accomplishment in my opinion. But again, that's not something that probably most people would assume that.
It was before I got good at barbecue.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing about it was, when I was a kid, my dad did triathlon. I didn't know the distance. I just remember running with my dad and watching him, swim in the river and this sort of thing. But no one did it around me. I just did it on my own. So I went down to do it, and I took a buddy with me, my brother, and my dad and stepmother. The craziest thing, not to get you on a massive tangent, my dad gets into it and just completed Ironman Chattanooga last year at 66 years old.
No shit.
They're in Colorado right now doing halves. My stepmother has been close to finishing a full couple times. She's finished multiple halves. My buddy that came in, diabetic, 6'6", 350 pounds on all sorts of medicine. He gets the bugs. He didn't exercise at all anymore. Gets the bug so bad. He's completed multiple full Ironman. He's lost over 100 pounds. He's a very highly respected USA triathlon coach. So anyway, it changed all these other people's lives inadvertently, and then I got out of it.
You kick the hornet's nest over and walk away, right?
Yeah, on to the next challenge.
Yeah, that's fucking cool, man. Yeah, I mean, the triathlon thing is wild, no doubt about it. I'm looking at having a guy on, I don't know if you've heard of him, the Iron Cowboy is his nickname.
Yeah.
That did 50 fucking Ironmans in 50 days in 50 states. I mean, to me, I can't even wrap my fucking head around that.
I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to trying to get into his fucking mind and see.
I mean, I've been recovering from my Ironman for 9 years now.
still on the up. Yeah, no shit. So, once you started Meat Church, kind of like, where did that come from? Because to me, obviously branding and social media is a lot of it. And to me, Meat Church is a really brilliant fucking brand and marketing theme, especially with, the names of the rubs that coincide with church or gospel or, religion, generally speaking, I guess. Where did that come from, and how was it born?
It's a kind of a cool story, but it's crazy when I look back, because everything we've accomplished, I'm the company, like I have, my wife helps me, my son helps me, but there's no marketing company or anything like that. No one's ever logged into our social media. So sometimes I wake up and I'm like, are you a cook? Are you a marketing guy? Are you a business guy? It's like, it's kind of interesting. But, to answer your question, there's a friend of ours in Dallas, Alice Lasad. She's super funny. She tweeted on a Sunday morning. She took a picture of a plate of barbecue at Slow Bone in Dallas, and she said, "I'm about to have my hashtag Meat Church." And I laughed, and I screenshot it, no intention, filed it away. And then down the road, when we were going to start cooking competition barbecue, I just said, that's kind of a cool name. And I thought it was edgy. And I've always been a firm believer that you can have 1 foot over the line, maybe not 2. So I'm Southern Baptist. I thought, man, my family's not going to like it, but I just thought it was an edgy name.
Yeah.
And then
edgy in the South for sure.
Yeah. So I thought, like I said, when I say the fellowship aspect, like me and you sitting here having food, the communal aspect, I thought church works with that, right? Not trying to don't really mean anything bad by it. So I went with a name, and, the story about the first rub, holy cow, kind of kicks off the story how the company started, because we had the name Meat Church and we were just competing. So I make this tryout video for BBQ Pitmasters. The Barbecue Editor of Texas Monthly tweets it out, and he says, "Hey, help my friend at Meat Church get on at BBQ Pitmasters." Well, at BBQ Pitmasters on Twitter is the handle of the executive producer, John Marcus. So if you replied, John Marcus got a copy of it. Well, that tweet didn't exactly go viral, but it blew up. Like, all these well-known people in barbecue retweeted it. It was kind of a funny video, I guess, right? And it was halfway professional instead of just some damn iPhone video. So the video went nuts, and John Marcus DM'd me. I don't know him, never talked to him, I probably followed him. DM'd me, he said, hey man, you got to call off the dogs. Like, he was just getting blown up with all his responses. And I was like, well, apparently you don't know how Twitter works. But they called me and said, you're going to be on the show. So I had 3 weeks to prepare and drive to Tampa, Florida to shoot it. Well, and I've told the story a million times, but one of my, so I took this Holy Cow and this honey hog rub. Honey hog is our all-purpose, and it has honey powder in it. Well, you can't go to H-E-B or whatever grocery store and buy honey powder. So I buy a specialty store. So I go in this place on lunch south of Fort Worth, and I was buying 5 pounds of honey powder. And as the guy was getting my order, I was noticing on the counter there were labels of competitive barbecue products that I recognized. And I just said, hey, you make that or something? And he explained to me that he was what's called a co-packer. And I know what the hell a co-packer was. So he said, you give me your recipe and I'll make your rub for you. And
it sounds like a second guy in a threesome, just so you know. Sorry, I got to throw that in there.
So so I was heading back to the office and called my brother and said, hey, this dude said he could make my rub. And Josh said, well, go do it. And so I called the guy back and I said, make my beef rub and call it Meat Church Holy Cow. That had always been in my head. Yeah. So that is literally, it was born in 10 minutes, and that's where it started. So I took the 2 on there and we went from there.
Like I said, I mean, to me, it's brilliant, not just because it kind of fits the narrative being in Texas and Southern speaking, but it's a great idea. No two ways about it. Did the gal that hashtag that initially give you any shit about stealing her thunder or anything?
No, and what's even worse is she's most known now for her charity, which is Meat Fight, and that existed at the time. Yeah. And I didn't really think about the relation to it or whatever, but they're friends of ours. Her husband's an attorney, and he actually gave me some guidance on trademarking Meat Church. And as our pay it forward deal, their charity is who we write our big check to every year.
Oh, nice. So that's fucking cool.
Full circle.
You want to talk about that real quick, just what they do? So
yeah, I mean, it's actually really cool if you're into barbecue or just into helping people. So this deal called Meat Fight is in Dallas. It happens in the fall every year, and it's super unique. So it's to fight MS. So the premise of the big event is they take chefs, not barbecue pitmasters. So I would say some of the most well-known badass chefs in Dallas, and they create teams and they cook off barbecue against each other. So it's a fine dining chef making brisket effectively, right?
That's fucking badass.
But the chefs are all people you would know. And so basically ends up being like a meat circus, a carnivore, a carnival. So you go in this building, it's near Love Field, and they've got like midway games, and they're all meat themed. And so, they do this live auction that makes a ton of money. And so they raise a ton of money for MS every year, but you go in, you get to eat all this food, you get drinks. It's badass. Yeah. So there's worse ways to spend a Sunday night.
That's a cool fucking deal. We'll definitely throw some sort of link in there to get people to learn or find out more about it. So once Meat Church was kind of born, can you walk us through the process of how you built it from where it was at that point, with your very first rub to kind of where it is now?
Yeah, I had a few things that I did. So the physical product had black and white labels, and they just in text said what they were. And so I tried to change that pretty quick because I thought it was boring. And I walked into a grilling store one day and I looked at the rub wall and I was like, everything looks the same to me from 20 feet. And you've got to get right up to it to go, oh, well, this is the pecan rub, and this is the brisket rub, and this is the rib rub. And so there are a fair amount of cartoons in barbecue. So I found a cartoon artist and I asked him to illustrate something for me, and we hit it off. So I could text the guy right now, and by the time this is over, he'll have me new designs. I don't know what he does during the day. But so I went with that on a couple of the bottles, and I'm a guy that likes gray and black and white and just in what I wear and things. And I thought, you know what, this will be different, because I'll tell you up front, one of my number one things is I'm not trying to be anybody. I'm trying to do my own thing. This is a super unique brand. Yeah. And so it started with that. I thought, well, let's have this eye-catchy kind of look. And so that's where the look came from. But then even from a higher level, I wasn't setting out to be the best in competition. I wasn't setting out to open a restaurant. And at that point, I wasn't even thinking I was going to be like a barbecue educator, which I am now. It was, I'm just going to do what I'm doing. And, so I was trying to align with some cool partners. So early on, Big Green Egg brought me in because on Pitmasters, I used a pit and an egg. And so I started working with them. I started teaching at their culinary center, which was badass because that totally validated. So now I can say I was on Pitmasters and I teach for Big Green Egg. So you got some credibility. which was key. Obviously the products, I'm not bragging, but obviously they were good, because if somebody bought your rub and they tasted like crap, then they'd move on. I rarely hear that people don't like it. So that's been good. It looks different. And then I just started telling people how when I look back, I didn't realize this forever, but I was always telling you how to do it. And so I just sat back and thought, all right, I'm marketing to myself, right? I'm sitting at home. I've popped out little kids. I don't get to run around and hunt like I did or play hockey or do whatever, right? Whatever my hobby was, I was at home and I had money. This time in your life where my demographic is, males 28 to 55, but it's guys that they've settled down a little bit. They've got their first house and they think they can cook. And so
then they find out they can't.
100%. And they come to me. But I thought, what do I need? And so it was like, okay, how do I kind of paint this big picture? Like, what do I need? If I have a beef rub and I have an all-purpose rub, what's next? Okay, well, I don't have a hot rub, so let's go do that. And that's where I started. I started small and just trying to fill these little holes and, again, do my own thing, not trying to be these other people. And it's resonated with people. They've latched onto it big time.
Yeah. No, I mean, clearly they have. Was there, in the 5.5 years that you've been going, was there one point where it kind of exploded all of a sudden, or has it been a pretty regular grind?
Well, in the beginning, there was a big jump, which, and it feels like it's been steady since, but I can give you a couple milestones. So that TV show aired in April of 2014. So clearly a hobby, right? In November of that year, we were at the Cowboys game on Thanksgiving, and my wife looked at me and she said, "What'd you do?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And so we have apps on our phone that, connected to our website, and we were always getting alerts when there was an order. And she was like, well, it was in the morning. And she's like, well, we've got like 35 orders this morning. And I said, well, I created an ad on Facebook and I made a demographic and I put $20 behind it. And then I went and looked at Facebook and I saw that it was actually working. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. So it took off. And so I always tell people that was the first moment that we knew it was something was there. Like it was a sharp jump. Well, what was interesting was I thought it was going to be for the day. Well, every day I kept saying it's going to drop, and it blew through the holidays. And so we went up to like this new level of business. And again, not enough money to make a living, but it was like, this is not just a joke anymore.
Yeah.
So that was the first spike. The second spike was when I partnered with somebody major. So when, I did a Big Green Egg event, and I wrote recipes for them and they would put them on their social. Now suddenly all these eggheads, particularly in the Southeast, would start using it. So there was a big spike with that. And then that happened again later when I got on with a new partner, Traeger. You get introduced to this new market and people that you might have isolated. It was this cool partner thing. It wasn't overt marketing. It was this natural thing of like, oh, I started working with this guy and they started talking about me. And all of a sudden all their audience was like, oh, here's this Meat Church guy. So there was, the egg thing happened, the Traeger thing happened, and there were definite spikes that have gone with that. And that's carried through. Like, this morning I wake up and I've got emails from guys that say, hey, and I'm not plugging, this is just the truth. They'll say, I'm a platinum Traeger dealer in blah, blah state, and all our customers are asking for you because I do content for them and I make videos for them. And there's no effort on my part, right? I'm not like, we're in 600 stores and I've never picked up the phone and said, hey, it's Matt Pittman, you ought to try my rub. Not one time.
Yeah.
It's all organic.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like in the nature of business, I mean, to me that's how it seems to generally work that way, is because I mean the reality of it is life is about authenticity, and if you're not, or if a product isn't or whatever, people see through that bullshit pretty quick.
Yeah.
So
it might work in the short term, but it doesn't sustain.
Yeah, you're not going to fool anybody more than once. So business-wise, is there a couple of things that, looking back on in terms of your growth, that were hard lessons learned that, for advice of somebody, irrespective of what their product may be or service or whatever, is that if they're looking to start a business, what are some things that you've learned business-wise that were a real kick in the nuts?
This one doesn't answer it completely, but I can tell you the number one pain that we've had is that by nature of, it's not like we took a pile of money and said, I need to come up with this brilliant idea and we're going to go do this thing. It evolved from, something that was cool into something, but we didn't always know that. We didn't know then what we know now, right?
Yeah.
So it's easy to look at revenue now and be like, oh, well, this has been a viable business for this amount of years. Well, the hardest thing is like year 2, coming on year 3, all the time you spend away from your family, and love my wife to death, but her being livid with me because I suddenly quit all my hobbies and this became my hobby. then it consumed my personal life, takes away from your family, takes away from your kids. And really now it's as easy as saying, well, your hobby was more important than your family. Well, it doesn't look that way now because, okay, it turned into something good, but just you've got to learn to balance your time. And that's a lot easier said than done. When you have a corporate job, you're given a certain amount of structure, right? You got to be there at a certain time. You got to do things every week, every month, every quarter. When you have your own business, if you don't, it sounds cheesy, but you have to have that. You have to come in with that structure, or it will wreck you. Like this 2019 has been my hardest year yet. I'm on my own and don't have to answer to anyone, and I'm a planner. But you have to take the time to step back and say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And I say I don't sleep, like I never do, right? I work my ass off, but it's either going to kill me or my family in the meantime. Yeah. So the biggest lesson is it's easy as planning. Like think like you have a corporate job, and every so often you got to say, okay, here's what we're going to do in this time, and compartmentalize it and go do it.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. And I know, for me, having been an entrepreneur for a decade now, I couldn't agree more. I know, that's been, unquestionably my biggest challenge is how to balance all that. And for me, I think just, without question, I think the problem or the reason why entrepreneurs get into that situation is because there's no fucking safety net.
Yep.
Is that you don't have the ability to punch the fucking clock and not worry about something because you're the last stop. I mean, no matter how many employees you have or whatever's going on, whether it's 1 or 1,000, is that ultimately like it's your fucking responsibility if it fails, And so I know for me at least that's why it's so hard for me to force myself to not think about things or work on things or whatever. And having a family also, that's a tough challenge for sure. Where do you see this going, both, from a goal standpoint and, the natural evolution of Meat Church and into the future?
I had to answer that yesterday, and it was kind of
Am I not coming up with any fucking original questions?
No, it's just interesting. I had an interview yesterday with Texas Monthly Barbecue, and that hey, what's next? But it's an interesting time to ask that because let me back up and tell you about this year. But we had an amazing opportunity to open a restaurant. And my number one question I always get is, "Where's your restaurant? When's your restaurant?" Because we go to these dang festivals, barbecue festivals, and we have the longest line, and we're not a restaurant, right? And I'm talking about longer lines than the people that I look up to. And so it's nonstop. When's your restaurant? Where's your restaurant? Why don't you have a restaurant? I just think it's like people naturally think that's what you're going to do. And we spent about 3 months earlier this year vetting an amazing opportunity. And I can say it now with AT&T in downtown Dallas. So they're putting like almost $200 million into their corporate headquarters to have this like discovery district that just kick-ass place. They want to make it a top 3 tourist destination. And they were like, here's the keys to the Meat Church restaurant and beer garden. Like, how badass does that sound? And it was gorgeous. And we vetted it. And, after the first pitch, I went home and my wife doesn't 1% want to open a restaurant, right? She's not wired for me to be gone all the time doing that. But we walked out of the pitch and she said, we need to consider that because it was unbelievable. And the next day, I didn't sleep that night. And she said, what the hell's your problem? Like, what was wrong with you last night? And I said, I feel like we left the doctor and he just told us that we're about to have triplets. And we've already got 4 kids, right? Like, I ain't got time for triplets. So we didn't end up doing it. We passed on it, right? And somebody else will do it and it'll be amazing. And I'm sure when I go eat there, I'll be jealous that it doesn't say Meat Church. But going back to what I was saying, trying to do my own thing, I'm keenly focused on this. Like she always says, go to you got these guys on social media sucking you off. She says that to me all the time. Like, I don't care. But what gets me is watching the likes go up that equate to watching transactions and dollars go up. All I care about is picking up my phone and saying, okay, we've sold X amount today, and just watching it go. And so, okay, I'm getting to your question, but step 1 was get out of corporate America and report to myself and be able to take care of my family, right? So we're there. Step 2 for me is I want my family to have the fun things to do, right? We just went to Utah and stayed in this sick condo, and I'm looking around going, how much does this cost and how do I get here? And we floated the river in New Braunfels this past weekend, and she'd look at a house and she was like, is that Meat Church money or is that next level money? So I've told her
wife to say some shit like that, huh?
Yeah, my goal is, I immediately want to double the size of my business, organically growing what we're doing. So I can't tell you that we're going to open this restaurant or we're going to do this new venture. I want to add new products because we're a lifestyle brand. We don't just sell a seasoning. We got a ton of swag and whatnot. I want to keep growing what we do, so that within the next year we double again, and then I want to double again. And we've got these, no different than anybody else. Like next year I need a lake house and I want to pay cash for it. So that's the stuff that drives me. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm focused right now, just growth.
Do you have a mission statement?
Well, I don't have a mission statement. What my saying is that we barbecue to bring people together to make good memories over great food, but I don't have an internal corporate mission statement. Yeah. Well, unless it's my age old, work really hard, play even harder.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. Moving kind of into the next phase of business for you, I guess, in terms of growth. As it sounds like it's pretty fucking small in-house. Like, to me, it would only make sense, or I guess I'm asking, is that next level having like a business manager or something like that you're turning some of the things over to grow it where it's not just you doing it?
Yeah, that's my largest current problem. So I spoke with a friend of mine, who's the CEO of a $400 million company that he contributes to Forbes, and I think he's brilliant. And so, that goes back to kind of what I said a minute ago. Like sometimes people have a business idea and they get a certain amount of money and they go build this thing up and go. This has come like through the family. So, you've got the structure is you've got me that leads the company. You've got my son that runs our brick and mortar store, right? You've got him and my brother-in-law who do our online order fulfillment and with another employee. And then I have a partner in a manufacturer who manufactures my product and delivers my wholesale stuff. So I'm able to kind of outsource that to where we're not actually, doing it ourselves. So we have a pretty good setup. But I'm currently inundated by the thing that I haven't talked about, which is my appearance and cooking schedule. So can you be here? Can you do this? There's only one of me. And that's what takes up so much of my time and my personal bandwidth, where I need management and help like that. So we're certainly beyond a breaking point of needing someone to manage that sort of the business.
Yeah. To me, that's a necessity. Product versus service-based business, models is that agreed. To me, you got to have the products, but you also have to have somebody that can facilitate that, or you'll work yourself into the fucking grave. Before we get into some kind of like the big elements of barbecue, which I have a bunch of different things that I'm curious to get your take on written down. Before we jump into that, I am curious, like from a design standpoint, and by design I mean the actual recipes for the rubs. Do you have any classical training, culinary wise? Are all of these rubs that you have, are they just, well, this is good, let me throw some of it? Like, yeah. Do you still do development? How long does it take, or has it taken to develop? Does it depend? If you could talk about the actual design of the rubs, where it comes from and how it all fucking works.
That's been really interesting because I don't have any, I didn't grow up being a seasoning guy, right? And I didn't grow up being a barbecue guy. So the beef rub came from Texas barbecues, supposedly salt and pepper. Some people put a little other stuff with it. And so my beef rub started out salt and pepper, and a guy that helped me said, garlic goes in it well. And so I did that, added paprika for color, and boom, that one was done. The all-purpose rub, the honey hog, I just started with a recipe that I found on Google that was like a Southwestern all-purpose type rub. Mm-hmm. And so that was the basis of it. And so now I kind of do a couple things. I kind of know where I want to go. So the internet's a great place to start, just to give you a palette to begin with. And then I know enough about it now that we can tweak and change. And then my manufacturing partner, they have a lot more expertise in seasoning than I do, so they help a lot as well. So I can go to my pecan rub, for example. I did the pecan rub because I was looking at my arsenal, what's missing, and someone at a huge store you were at this past weekend said, this pecan rub does really well for us. And I was like, well, I could go do that.
Was it the egg or the John Henry's or what?
It was John Henry's. Yeah. It's big in Texas.
Yeah,
right?
I'll be the first to admit, like, I've gone through God knows how many pounds of that shit over the last. I was
like, man, I want to compete with that. Yeah. And that was one of the few times I looked at someone and said, I want that. But mine's different. So I took our honey rub and we added a pecan flavoring to it, which I didn't have the expertise to do that. So my manufacturing partner said, well, here's things we can do. And that's kind of how we got there. So now at this point, I look back and I say, all right, what am I trying to do? What do I need to go after? What am I trying to emulate? And at this point, I know everybody in barbecue now, so you can get no shortage of opinions. But I'm working on a game rub, and that's and I've had one for a bit, and nothing I've put out. But like by the time the fall runs around, people are hunting, I want to have mine out there. And So I'll get one and play with it until I like it. I mean, the R&D part of Meat Church doesn't suck, right? You get to try all this different stuff. But then I usually send stuff out to 20 different buddies and say, tell me what you think. Yeah. That's actually really hard too, because I want them all to tell me they love it. And when they tell me they don't like it, I'm like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah. Fuck you anyway. I'm not sending you any more shit. So you've got the main 8. I know, looking at the website, there's some other formulas and stuff. Is there a limit to which, like, you don't want to have more than X number, or is it just like, do you plan on adding a certain number of rubs to the arsenal? Or
so when we started, I was trying to follow the Apple model that they don't have that many SKUs, right? Yeah. And that's where I was focused. But I can tell you some interesting stories. So one I didn't bring you today, our honey bacon, that was supposed to be a limited edition. And so it was a mashup of our bacon rub and our honey rub, and it went gangbusters. And so I thought, well, okay, I need to get rid of it. Try to get rid of it. The consumer said, no, you got to keep it. So I kept it. Well, it's very similar to my bacon rub, and I think it's better than the bacon rub. So I was going to kill the bacon rub. Well, then I have all these people come out of the woodwork saying, no, keep it. So now the bacon rub's a little bit niche. There's a ton of people that love it. There's people that buy it in bulk that put it on fried peanuts and all this craziness. So I haven't gotten rid of it. So there's this quandary of, can you have too much stuff?
Yeah, I think you can.
Yeah, I think so too. And because people walk up now to my core set of barbecue rubs and they say, what's the difference? And you say up front, well, there's overlap with quite a few of these. Like I have a gospel and a holy gospel, another limited edition thing. So there certainly is overlap, but I like to play with the limited edition thing, pull some things in and out, McRib them a little bit. Yeah. So actually works out kind of cool. I mean, we've got a hat right now. We went on vacation recently to Mexico, and we created this new hat that's a stained glass window with a pig, a cow, and a chicken overlaid on each other. And we had 50 of them, which doesn't sound like a ton, but I put them on Instagram as I boarded the plane, right? Mm-hmm. By the time we were about to take off, I had an email saying, when are you going to get those hats back in? And I thought, what? And I went and looked, the 50 sold out in 20 minutes. Like, that's pretty good. Yeah. And so now we've got new ones coming in, and I'm not kidding you. I'm getting 50 emails a week saying, when is that hat coming back? I'm like, that's kind of cool. This limited edition thing is kind of nifty.
Yeah, no shit.
So I don't know what the limit's going to be. You won't come in and see me with 50. That's not the goal. I'll probably continue to kind of pull some stuff in and out. You know, I think one of my big problems is I try to make people too happy. If one wholesale customer says, no, I really want to keep that, I'm like, oh, well, I got to keep it, which I know I don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the tough parts of business, I think, is, learning when to say no. Understand. I mean, there's a million things you can get into or opportunities. It's which ones do you pick? And that's always the challenge, I think. But all right, so getting into some kind of the intricacies of barbecuing as a whole, I wanted to talk a little bit about just the different components of it. Here's how I look at it, and I'm curious to get your take. Is obviously you have the meat, you have the equipment that you're using to cook it, i.e. just the cooker itself. You've got whatever type of rub, seasoning, injection, brine, we'll just call it seasoning across the board. Then last but not least, you certainly have the method that you're using, or, the smoke itself, whether it's from pellet or chunks or, an offset stick burner. I mean, whatever it is that, to me, those are kind of the main components of barbecue. And I see a lot of parallels actually between barbecuing and dog training, in that, a lot of times I see people, and I'm curious to get your take, that are, they'll take a shitty quality piece of meat and try to make up for that in all of those other facets. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's the genetics in dog training, is that, the genetics of a dog are going to dictate how that finished product is going to be. And you're always going to be limited if the genetics are at a low level. I don't care how good of a cook you are or what kind of fucking rub you put on it. I mean, yes, that's going to help, but those are more tweaks than they are if you're dealing with a mass-produced, meat farm level of quality of food. But, from your perspective, do you view it kind of that same way in terms of barbecue? Or if somebody said, tell me about fucking barbecue 101, how would you describe it?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's like that old saying, you can try to put lipstick on the pig, basically. But, one of the things I say up front is to end with amazing results, you got to start with amazing ingredients. And so, when I teach barbecue, I cover all aspects of everything, meat selection to brining, injecting, seasoning, glazing, how you cook it, whatever. And, the number one thing is my way's not the right way. I say this all the time. It's just what I do. There's no wrong way to do it. You get to choose. So I don't tell you if you have to buy a select graded brisket versus a prime or Wagyu brisket. I'm here to tell you the differences so you can make your choice and what your budget or your car will allow you to go get. I'll give you my opinion on the type of wood you should use. And, so I have sometimes I'm like, man, just go in and tell them your passion. Tell them how they need to do it. But I'm more of a wide ranging, like here's your different options. But I do, with that said, you don't have to start with the highest grade Wagyu to have good food, but you don't want to start with the crappiest either, right? Yeah. So there's a level you need to start at, but you can't start with junk and end up with something amazing. I mean, when I go compete in the Houston Rodeo this past year, I walked in there with a $250 brisket before I even started, right? Yeah. Not a $30 select one that I picked up at Walmart.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I mean, to me, that takes a lot of the expertise out of the equation. I mean, if you're dealing with, super prime grade or Wagyu or something that's so heavily marbled that you almost can't fuck it up, it makes your job a lot easier. Speaking of meat quality, different types, I would like to talk a little bit about the different cooking styles and which ones lend themselves the best to the different types of primary meats, i.e. beef, chicken, pork, and fish. From your perspective, going down that list, what is from a class standpoint when you're teaching and talking about, can you kind of go through the different types and what you look for and what people should be looking for?
Yeah, for sure. So we start with beef since we're in the beef state, but I always kind of go with this chart and say at the bottom of the barrel, you've got select graded meat, which is generally what you would find at like a Walmart. Avoid that. Above that is choice grade and then prime grade. And then you've got the crazier stuff like Wagyu. So I'll come back to that. So between select, choice, prime, beef wise, if you're going to make a brisket or even a steak, I say try to buy at least choice. So more marbling in it, more taste effectively is the short of it. Choice brisket will make a great brisket. The beauty of living in Texas is prime brisket doesn't cost that much more. So people run down to Costco and pay, I think, like $3.39 a pound for brisket right now. Go to your grocery store, that may be what you're paying for choice, or it might be $5 difference for the whole brisket. So, if you can afford it, buy the prime, but choice is just fine. The number one barbecue joint on the Texas Monthly Top 50 list does not cook prime, so obviously it makes good brisket.
Is that Franklin?
No, he's number 2 right now. Snows in Lexington only open on Saturdays.
Oh, shit. Yeah, they knocked him off the top. Huh?
Yeah, at least temporarily. Yeah. So,
do you know Franklin very well?
Yeah, I know Aaron. He's a super good dude. So a little quirky, but good dude. So, and then I think one thing that's interesting right now is it's like all the marketing and food in general. You go in the grocery store and there's all this organic, this or that, and all natural. And I swear a bunch of moms feel like you have to buy all organic or your kid's going to grow up deformed or something. But beef is kind of the same way. Like now I'll go in my grocery store in H-E-B and there'll be Wagyu in there every now and then. And people think when they see that, like, oh, that's going to be better. Well, there are different grades of Wagyu or percentages, and they don't, you don't know what that is. So real world example, right now, a prime brisket at my grocery store is about $50, $55. The Wagyu's $100. So at a recent class, I love to mess with people and not tell them I'm going to do it. Had 40 people in a class, and I need 2 briskets to feed 40 people. I cooked a prime and cooked that Wagyu. Mm-hmm. And I didn't tell them that. So when we went to serve it, you get a boat, and I said, there's a Meat Church flag, toothpick flag, and 1 slice, and the other's not. So there's a little difference. We'll tell you what it is later. Just tell us which one you prefer. 10 people preferred the one with the flag, which was prime, and 30 people preferred the Wagyu. So, 25%. And I said, all right, would those 30 of you that raised your hand say that slice was twice as good as a slice next to it? Like, no, just like barely. Like I barely preferred it. And I said, well, okay, well, if the brisket with the flag was $50 and it was $100, would you pay $100 to a man? They all said no. So then I walked through the market. I just think it's interesting. I said, all right, so if you walked in the grocery store, now I'm telling you what we did. Now knowing what you know, would you buy that $100 one? And they all said no. Okay, but yet when I go compete at the Houston Rodeo, I buy this Snake River Gold $250. That's a higher grade of Wagyu. So you don't know what you're getting. Just because it says it's Wagyu doesn't mean that it's like necessarily better. Yeah. I'll tell you, you definitely should not cook Wagyu briskets for like a high school graduation party because they don't. High school kids don't give a crap.
Yeah, no shit.
So anyway, I think that's kind of my beef lesson. Talking about the other meats, pork and chicken. I cook more of a commodity, what I call a commodity product there. So it's hard to go wrong in the grocery stores and here, right now on the pork side. different times a year, you get different brands. But like ribs and pork shoulder, there's a lot of good brands out there. I use Prairie Fresh, Seaboard products when I can. Smithfield makes good products. IBP makes good products. I don't buy anything crazy. If I'm buying like a pork chop for my family, I'd love to buy like a Berkshire pork chop because the taste is just so much different. But most people, when you're just doing like normal competitions thing, they're buying a commodity rib.
Yeah. I mean, pork in general seems like there's a lot more forgiveness with it, or there's a lot less nuance in terms of quality. Because I've certainly, I have tried, Curabota from Creekstone, that the one fucking rack of ribs is about 5 or 6 racks out of a grocery store. And same thing, like in my opinion, which isn't worth much, there's not a big enough difference to distinguish, especially with pork, because it is such a different meat than beef that way. But do you mess much with chicken and fish? Yeah.
So, I cook a fair amount of chicken. I do try to buy these like all natural chickens because that's not a big price difference.
Yeah.
My grocery store, it's marginal. So that's not a big deal. But yeah, I cook a lot of chicken. I love to cook fish. I'm the only one in my house that loves it. So I'm a guy that'll fire up the grill and say, all right, grill's on, I'm having fish. What do you want? And you can have, your pork chop or chicken or whatever. People in barbecue, like consumers, are afraid of fish because they don't know how to cook it. They're afraid it'll stick or they'll mess it up. It's kind of like game. And so if I ever say, hey, next class, what would y'all like to see? I get fish asked more often than not.
No shit.
Yeah.
I know one of the things I like to do, first question, when you say you fire up the grill, what is that? Are you talking gas grill or you always fire up an egg or what?
Never a gas grill.
Yeah.
I told you a minute ago that my way wasn't the right way. My way is the right way with this. Gas grill's not the right way. No, I'm kidding. Anytime somebody cooks with a gas grill, I say, what flavor gas are you grilling with?
That's some good mercaptan you got there and fucking infused into the meat.
So it's pretty well documented that I'm Traeger's barbecue guy. So I have a Traeger, lots of Traeger. I have every grill and smoker known to man. Have Big Green Eggs, have a pit barrel, have a Weber, have offset stick burners, have open fire grills. I always tell people, I don't care what you cook on, right? You do you. And I think what you use depends on your life. Like some people are super busy and they don't have time to mess with it. Some people love like a Kamado Joe or Big Green Egg where you've got to manually adjust the temperature and it's whatever you like, right? I'm down with all of it. I started using a Traeger a lot more because I was so busy and I'd commuted an hour. I'd come home and I could turn it on and I could go in and hang out with the family, come back out and have a good wood flavor, smoky flavor food versus like, throwing chicken on a gas grill.
Yeah.
So it's easy and tastes really good.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, the one exception I make gas wise is the super hot top down, almost like a salamander that gets, 1,500 degrees. Like to me, to reverse sear a big tomahawk or fucking anything, frankly, smoke it low for an hour and a half and then give it a super hot fucking sear on something like that is a really nice mix. But
I love it. And all these people, like these beefers that are out 1,500 degrees, auto wilds where you just stick the meat in there. It's like, I'm down with that for sure.
Yeah, I have an auto wild. They sent one to try, and I honestly was not expecting to like it as much as I do.
Yeah, it's pretty rad.
Yeah, it's a bad little motherfucker. But I grew up similarly. Like my idea of barbecue was, bone dry fucking chicken breasts and hamburgers on a shitty gas grill. It wasn't until I moved here, and I think it was mostly ego, honestly, is that I moved here, didn't know shit about anything barbecue wise, and guys that grew up here or whatever would just cook boudin or fucking pork tenderloins or fucking briskets or pulled pork or whatever, and I was like, this motherfucker made that. Like, if this backwoods inbred fuck can do this, like I ought to be able to figure it out. Yeah. Of course, it took a few years of fucking a lot of things up to figure it out. But the one thing I was going to say on the fish, I do like to use like Chilean sea bass, like on a salt block in a primo or an egg, any type of smoker. To me, I love making fish and making that combination. But do you mess with like the Himalayan salt blocks much for making things, or?
I've got one. I didn't get into it a whole lot, but I like you said, things like fish. I love putting scallops on it, that sort of thing. That's kind of the extent of what I've done on it. Someone gave me one as a gift years ago, and so that's what I use it for. Yeah.
Before we move on to wood specific, Speaking of brisket, because that's such a big ticket item, and for me, I'll be the first to admit that's the hardest thing for me to not fuck up. I've got Franklin's book. I've watched God knows how many tutorials and tried, a lot of different ways. For me, I still continue to struggle with consistency on it. Some of them turn out really well, and a lot of them don't. And that's an expensive one, doing it, $275 on a good fucking Yoder, pellet smoker, waiting until there's good bark and right around the stall, 160, 170, wrap it in fucking butcher block, brown paper, and sometimes they turn out great and sometimes they fucking suck. Do you have the same struggle with brisket specifically?
No, all my briskets are perfect.
They're all perfect. No shit. Go figure.
Wait, I told you one was bad earlier. Yeah. Yeah, that's a common question. When I give a brisket talk, I tell people look, so first off, we're in Texas and people go buy a smoker or a grill. First thing I want to do is make a brisket. And I'm always like, slow down. Why don't you try chicken? But, you bought it to make a brisket. So let's go for it. People ask me all the time, how did you get the bark that dark? And how are you doing that? And that's, I teach if you go buy a 15-pound brisket, trim a couple pounds out of it, you're left 12, 13-pound brisket. My recipes online in my books are $275. That's going to take you about 10 hours to cook. So I teach that method. Here's your 10-hour easy way. And the reason I teach that is I say, this is a typical Saturday cook, right? Mm-hmm. Most of you are you're cool with cooking for 10 hours. Don't go buy a 22-pound brisket, because then you're going to be cooking that thing all day and half the night. So that's usually what I teach. But then I say, it's not the only way to do it. You can slow your cook down if you need to. I'm about, one of my videos I'm about to come out with is I did this 21-hour brisket. And it's not that the 21-hour brisket is magical. It's that I put it on a pellet grill at night, low, to a temperature won't finish, like 190, and just let it ride while I'm asleep. Get up, take my kids to school, come home, wrap it up, put a temperature probe in it, go to the office, monitor it from my phone, and have it done by the time you get home. Bump it up around lunch, and it finishes by the time you get home. But so there's all different ways to do it. With all that said, all my talks lately are people are like, well, the Texas way is to wrap in paper. Should I wrap in that, or should I wrap in foil? And so I back up and say this: if you're struggling with brisket and you're having a hard time, then go with the foolproof way, which is put it in the smoker. I like it to be fat up. It's kind of the Texas way, and don't touch it, right? Whatever your temperature is, 225, 250, 275, and just let it ride. And when you start to develop that bark and that brisket's about 165 degrees internal temperature, wrap it. And before you jump to paper, you can either wrap it in 2 pieces of heavy duty aluminum foil, or one way that's really good, get a full length disposable pan like you'd get at Sam's or Costco, lay the brisket in it and cover that pan with foil. Either that or the heavy duty foil, you'll capture all the jus that comes out of the brisket. So now you're guaranteed you're not going to dry it out. You are crutching it with the foil and steaming it, so the bark will not stay as great as if you wrapped it in paper. But, and then I tell people, super important, don't pull it till it's done, which is probe tender. So you're going to probe that brisket in the flat, and in the 190s, you have to work to push your thermometer in. But when you get just over 200, it's suddenly going to give, and you just, there's no resistance. That's when the brisket's done. Pull it off, let it rest in a cooler for at least an hour. Now you're going to have a super juicy brisket. The bark may not be amazing. It's going to taste great. Your family's going to love it. And then you can start to graduate into, okay, my confidence is back. That brisket's awesome. Now I want to wrap one in paper, right? Don't go too hot with it. Maybe wrap in butcher paper around 165 and kind of baby it till it gets to 203 and see how you like that. So.
Yeah. So I guess the burning question from my perspective is, where does like from the split of point and flat, for those of you listening, most people that are still listening to this interview probably already know at least some of the specifics of this, but where I struggle with, I guess, is, when the flat's done, the point's not quite. And then if you wait till the point's done, then now your flat's a little dry. Is there any credence to cutting it at that point when it's...
So I cook them whole, even if I'm making Kansas City burn-ins out of the point meat. I like to keep the two muscles together. So the whole packer, a flat and a point, like you said, trimmed down really good. I cook it whole. I only monitor the temperature in the flat. I don't ever mess with the point. I'm right in the heart of the flat, so kind of the thickest part of the flat, or the middle of the flat, is really where I probe and check. And so that's what I'm monitoring. And I know as soon as that gives and it's tender, I'm okay with the point, because the point will be at a higher temperature and it's okay. I think people sometimes mess up because they temp the point. So the point has a lot more fat in it. It's going to go to a higher temperature, and then they don't pay attention to the flat, and that's what screws them up. So I just focus right in the middle of the flat, and I'm good.
Do you typically use a Thermapen instant, or do you ever leave one in?
Yeah, so it's exactly what I use. I use Thermapen to check my temperature. But if you have a smoker that has, or whether it has a built-in, what I call leave-in thermometer, so some grills have probes, or if you go by, like ThermoWorks sells standalone smokes or Blue Dots, whatever. I take those leave-in probes and I put them in the heart of the flat. And to me, that's just like your guidance, but they're not as precise as the Thermapen. So let's use a Traeger example. They have a thermometer that comes with them, a meat thermometer. I say, look, a Thermapen's $100, the instant read thermometer. The thermometer that comes with these grills like a Traeger aren't $100 thermometers. So they're close, but they're not as accurate. So what I do is I'll put that in a brisket in the flat, and I'll set an alarm for like 190 degrees. And at that point I start checking it with my Thermapen. So that's like my gospel. Yeah.
Are you typically wrapping at 165 in butcher block?
Yeah.
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 So is it a natural or safe assumption to say middle of the flat with a leave-in thermometer, and is there a brand you can recommend?
So ThermoWorks is what I use, and the reason I use it is I sell them in my store, but it's because I think it's the industry leader. They read, instant reads read in 2 to 3 seconds. Yeah. There's nothing better.
I have a Thermapen. I don't have a leave-in one. I've never really messed with it, but
so they weren't really my thing, because I'm kind of, I don't know if it's that I'm ADD and I'm always checking things. I rarely use those. So the video I just cut, I use one in there because a lot of people, my customers, they use them. Well, here's what happened. I made a brisket video with somebody with just my thermometer, and somebody commented, well, somebody tell this guy that there's a thermometer with the grill. And I wrote back, well, there's one with it. It's not as accurate. It's all the experts out there. But ThermoWorks, if you should check the ThermoWorks smoke. That's a really good one.
Yeah, okay. So leave that in and it hits 165 or so, provided the bark looks good. Slap some fucking butcher block paper around it, and when it hits 190, start hitting it with the Thermapen. You get a little over 200 and it should be good to go.
Yeah, and I just if you have that probe, I just run it through the paper or the foil into it, right? And then when I'm going to check it in the 190s with my Thermapen, I'm just going right through the paper or foil, no big deal. Don't open it up or anything like that. Way we can check it really quick. Yeah. I'd say, look, at 195, 190, 195, you're going to work with that thermometer to push it into the meat. But when you get to, it's usually 203 with the brisket. All briskets are different, but around 203, you'll push it in, and it's just like there's nothing butter there. Yeah, it's like a knife and butter. And then pull it off, and I say put it over in a Yeti, let it sit for at least an hour. But man, my brisket will hold in a cooler for like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, I've tried a lot of different methods. I've finished it in an oven once I've wrapped it, because to me at that point it's not taking any more smoke.
Yeah. I don't want to admit that, but yeah, you could take the brisket off your smoker and put it in your oven at 210, 225, and it's the same thing.
Yeah, I do it just to conserve pellets and again, because it's inside, it's a little easier to monitor, I guess. But
and make your house smell amazing.
Yeah, well, that's good. Damn sure, it's good advice. Now moving on to, first, do you always use Holy Cow for briskets, or do you ever mix it up?
That's my primary, but what I've been doing lately in 2019 is I kind of go 2-to-1 with Holy Cow to the Holy Gospel. So I heavy layer, it's probably 65, 70% Holy Cow, and then I top it with this Holy Gospel. Yeah. And that's what I did at the Houston Rodeo this year that got us 7th in the world, so I know it's tried and true.
Yeah, no, that's fucking great. All right, so moving on to the different types of wood, and I'll kind of lump in the types both in real stick burner wood and pellet. But if you could, what is your take? I guess is there a noticeable enough difference, in your opinion, going from real chunks of wood comparatively to pellet smokers to make it worth the fucking pain in the ass that it is?
Yeah, no. So I don't, and this is what I'm about to say is 110% true. So when I decided to align with a pellet grill company, that took gigantic soul searching. Yeah. Right. Because I'm offset, wood meat fire, Kamado, lump charcoal, no electronics, no gimmicks. I used to say my cooking style is really primitive. And so I say this up front, if the Traegers didn't make good enough barbecue or whatever you choose to use, right, Yoda or whatever, if the one that I was aligning with didn't make good enough barbecue, it would have been bad for business, and I wouldn't have done it. No one ever comes to my events. I mean, I asked them, I'll give brisket smoked on a pit and brisket smoked on a Traeger, and I'll say, can you tell the difference? Because this is a common misnomer for people that use older pellet grills to say, oh, they're not smoky enough. And do you have to put like a smoke tube in there to supplement it? No.
Yeah.
And I like smoke, like I like it heavier than most. And I deal with, I've got females in the family that don't like a lot of smoke or whatever. I, on the other hand, like smoke on everything. So and I use, but the thing is, I use heavier, what I call smoke woods or pellets. So I'm not using the sissy fruit stuff. I'm using
hickory and mesquite and shit.
Yeah, I'm going to use, and we can walk through what I think the differences are, but like hickory, mesquite, oak, definitely oak, Texas beef. I'm using the big ones. I'm not using light stuff. I only use light stuff if I'm doing, I don't know, curing bacon or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the fruitier woods, peach, cherry, fucking whatever, apple are all good for pork and things like that. But I do like to use cherry on beef sometimes. Cherry and pecan is a nice mix, I think. But
yeah,
for me, and this is probably more personal preference than all of the rest of the things you talk about. Is exactly that, is the smoke. I mean, for me, I like a little lighter smoke flavor. To me, heavy mesquite, like Pecan Lodge as an example. Like I think their quality of meat is fantastic. Their method is impeccable. For me, because I think they use exclusively mesquite. Like to me, it's just a little fucking strong and bitter for me. But that's just my take. But
that might be the barbecue joint that doesn't need to be ranked as high as it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I've eaten there a few times, and it's good. But again, like to me, the heavy mesquite is just a little too heavy for my taste. But all right, so obviously, the pellet smoker is good enough to fool people. Talking about the different types of pellet smokers, I know you can go Traeger or some of the, was it Grill Tech or Direct Tech. The different brands that are on the more budget friendly from that standpoint, all the way up to the several $1,000 Yoder or things like that. Do you think similarly, like are people going to be able to tell the difference between bottom of the barrel versus super high end?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's ones you got to look at, and there's ones that I would stay away from. And I have to get credibility here because some people just think, well, you're aligned with one, so you're going to pick them. But there's big differences. I mean, so you don't have to use a Traeger. Traeger invented the category 32 years ago, and when their patent expired, other people like Pit Boss and others jumped on and went out and knocked it off and made them. You can make good barbecue on all of them. I don't think you're going to get one off one and be like, that's not good. What the issues that come up are the reliability of things. So, I don't get to tell people what their budget can afford, but I can tell you that all my friends that have gone, not all my friends, several of my friends that have bought cheaper models, they go to Walmart and they buy a Pit Boss. More times than none, they end up with me ultimately trying to buy a Traeger. But like you said, there's some really high-end ones. Yoder makes a fantastic heavy-duty product if your budget, can't afford it. But to me, it just comes down to the reliability of the unit, the construction, everything that comes with it. So, and not to be cheesy again, but I tell people I'm not selling just a seasoning. It's more of an experience. And the reason I align with Traeger is their community, and they've got like an amazing app. Even if you don't ever want to get a pellet grill, download the app because the recipes, a bunch of mine are in there. Super good recipes. The things that kind of come with it are kind of good. But there are certain brands I would look at and certain brands that the cheapest of ones I don't think operate as good. Yeah.
No, that's certainly a fair point. I know, I've got Yoder YS640 out front that I've had a long time. It's had a lot of miles put on it. I have had a couple of issues with the internal thermometer going bad. It's happened twice actually, where we've had to replace it to where it wouldn't work. Basically it was not reading and wouldn't fire up because of it. Other than that, it's been great. I also have a Smokin' Brothers, which is much more middle of the road, that I've had really good results with. Also, I am curious, pellets. There are a lot of different pellet manufacturers. Some of them are legitimately 100% wood. Most of them are mixed. Some of them are mostly bullshit.
Yeah.
Is there a brand that you particularly prefer or recommend?
Well, I tell people, if somebody listen to this, take your pellets and drop them in a glass of water and make sure it dissolves into nothing. That'll tell you if it's 100% or not. So if there's ever anything left, then that's somebody pulling the wool over your eyes. So you got to find one that you like and that's consistent. Again, I'm aligned with one because they're given to me, but this company in Traeger owns their own mills, so they know what it is. Some other people buy from other people. B&B makes a good product. I think the Lumberjack stuff's pretty good. And I haven't run through like all sorts of different brands just because I get them. But like I said up front, drop your pellets in a glass of water and make sure they completely dissolve. Because a real 100% wood pellet, they're bound together by the heat process. There's nothing you don't need to add anything to it to make the pellet form. Yeah. So that'll tell you if there's some junk in there or not.
Yeah. When you are using your pellets, can you we'll say brisket, pork shoulder, and ribs, those three things, what pellets are you using?
So with beef, Texas barbecue is cooked with post oak. So like on my offsets, I'm running splits of post oak. So I like oak pellets. That's just a real Texas flavor. Pork, I like hickory. I think, smokiness is like oak and probably mesquite beside it. I don't really prefer mesquite, kind of like you said. It's got a distinct flavor and it runs a little hot. So I usually stick with oak if I want really, really smoky. Coming down the chain, hickory's less smoky. I always say if you could only buy one wood or pellet, hickory's a great all-purpose. And that's what I grew up on south, so I'm down with that. A little less smoky's pecan, great choice. I'm real particular about telling you like this will make the best, but here's others that you could use, Yeah. So I kind of stay in the heavier, harder type stuff like that is kind of the range that I stay in.
Yeah. Up here, there's a lot of red oak, not as much post oak. So I've used a lot of red oak, not pellets, but the real shit.
That's good.
Yeah, it works pretty well. But is there any brands that you'd say stay away from in terms of, you already kind of mentioned the pellet grills, but any pellet brands that you'd say for sure I know that this shit's half bullshit or otherwise?
Not really, but I'm just admitting because I don't use too much other stuff. Like I've got limited experience in other stuff because once I got in this game, I kind of I get my stuff, being honest. So I'm not hearing from other people like, oh, these suck. I just don't know. Yeah.
So you're typically using the Traeger brand pellets
because they give it to me.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the Fruta Wood Company out of Colorado? Mm. So they, in terms of real wood, I've ordered their stuff a number of times, and it's the best stuff I've ever come across. Super fresh, and you can order fucking everything. I mean, they have grape and fucking like lime wood. I mean, all sorts of obscure shit stuff that you can't typically get, and it's super fresh. I mean, they send it to you like overnight and have all of these storage conditions to keep it fresh and whatever. I mean, I've gotten peach and lemon and different types of cherry, and I mean, there's a lot of good stuff
check
out
it out.
there.
I mean, I've got some huge wood stacks next to my house, so I've got no shortage of options. Like, it's a cool thing about the business. People are like, hey man, I've cut this down and brought it to you. So I have some obscure fruit woods that people have brought to me. And anyway,
I've got some old railroad ties I can get rid of for you. All right, so in terms of, we've talked a little bit about cookers already, but I wanted to get into a little bit more. Most specifically on the charcoal side. Obviously, we went over the gas stuff. We've talked about pellets and stick burners. But in terms of the charcoal grills itself, you mentioned lump. Have you ever tried the I think it's called Bento-chan, like that little Japanese, real small stuff? And if you could kind of give us the brief rundown on your advice as it relates to charcoal, lump, or otherwise.
Yes, I have not used that. I just used lump, and so to educate people, if you go like when you grew up and you had match light or whatever, a lot of briquettes, not all briquettes, but a lot of briquettes have a lot of artificial stuff in them, binders and whatnot, and then you use lighter fluid to light it, right? And so when I got into cooking with a Kamado, I used lump charcoal, which is derived from actual wood, right? It's all wood, so I liked not having to have any additive as a starter because that stuff lingers, like you taste that. So it's just like building a campfire, right? So that's what I prefer, and I just think the taste is better. I love lump charcoal, love it to this day, use it to this day. Did a backyard cookout 2 weekends ago that I think the grill was running like 1,100 degrees, and I lost 10 pounds grilling hamburgers in front of it. But lump charcoal is the way to go. I have tons of, I've got like a pallet of it, at my house. A lot of good brands out there, and they come in the wood flavor, right? You got oak, hickory. I don't think it matters as much in a lump. I used Big Green Egg forever. I mentioned B&B, another really good one, Western Wood, Fogo. Fogo's the new hot one in the market right now that everyone's talking about.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I prefer the black bag over the yellow bag.
Yeah.
For sure. I've gotten a number of yellow bags, and I'm out there with a fucking sledgehammer
Huge.
It's like, if I had a 55 or 1,000-gallon drum, size fucking thing. But I like the Fogo.
Yeah, we sell the black one in our store because the yellow bag, it work for certain people, but they're huge. They're too big. The black ones are big enough. Like they're better than others. But
yep, absolutely. Do you fuck around with hibachi at all?
No, like that style, but not something that I'm doing.
Yeah,
really.
I am curious about grilling surface. Right? Is it? To me, I'm probably more particular than most people. I like whether it's expanded steel or like the hibachi thin, mesh wire kind of surface, or just the standard almost like ceramic piping. Do you have a preference? Do you think it makes that big of a difference? What's your take on the actual surface itself?
I think it makes a huge difference, and I have a lot of different things, so I can talk about that. But that's a really interesting question, because I think people jump in this game, they don't think anything about that. They're just like, oh, it's a grill. There's a grill grate, right? Whatever it is. But it could be a porcelain grate, it could be a stainless grate, it could be a cast iron grate, it could be bars, it could be solid surface. I think absolutely huge difference. So, and where it comes in for me, the Maillard reaction that occurs with meat on that hot metal. So think about when you take, let's just say a steak, for example, and you put it on a grill grate of whatever sort, the bars or expanded metal. So the marks that those leave on the meat, there's flavor in that, right? And again, we're not trying to burn the meat, but we're trying to add that flavor. I think those bars are, we kind of call them flavor bars, and there's something to that. So I like cast iron. I love cast iron grates. They're hard to maintain. You got to make sure they're dry and oiled, and so they don't rust. But let's go back to change the subject slightly. I love cooking on cast iron in general. I'm like a geek, old vintage cast iron collector. So I cook everything in cast iron skillets that I can. No different on your cook surface, right? If you love these Griswold cast iron pans from the 30s, then why not have a grill grate that's the same thing? So I love cast iron grates if you can get those and maintain them properly. And I talk a lot about that when we go to sear. So you talk about reverse searing. So I'd love to smoke a steak and then take it and sear it at the end. Well, I'll take my cast iron skillet and put it on the grate, make it piping hot so I can get that like full coverage sear. So those bars, back to your question, the type of grate you have, depending how far apart they are, what they're made of, those are going to add flavor to that thing you're cooking. And so I want the most coverage I can get generally, and want them super hot. So on cheaper grills, they just have these like porcelain grates that are just okay. You go to higher end ones, they have stainless. I have a 2x5 standalone Santa Maria grill, the whole thing stainless. And the bars are pretty close together for that exact reason. Third party product grill grates, a lot of people know of, they're out of Georgia. They're made out of anodized aluminum. You can set those on top of you can put them on an egg, a Weber, a pellet grill, or whatever the hell.
Campfire if you want.
Yep. And they're flat on one side, and they're I don't know, an inch tall raised on the other. And so they do a lot of things. I'd plug these guys because it's a badass product. But the little channels in between the grill grates will capture like a heavy marinade. But the top of the metal on these grill grates is 150 degrees higher than the bottom. So if you had a 500 degree egg and you put these grill grates on it, the top of the grill grate would be 650. Mm-hmm. So when you see people have these like gorgeous diamonds on their steaks in like steak competitions, they're putting them on grill grates.
Yeah. What's the name of that company?
It's Grill Grate. So grate is in Grate. So they're out of Georgia.
Just grillgrate.com.
Grill Grate. Yep. I have tons of sets of those. They're around $50, and I have them for just about every grill that I have. And so if you put those on a super hot grill and you lay a steak down for, I don't know, 3 minutes, and then you rotate it 90 degrees, do another 3 minutes, or however long you're doing it. When you pick it up, that's when you're going to have the perfect diamonds.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's flavor in that. I mean, big time.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, to me, there's something about just having a nice small grill grate that, like, especially if I'm camping, where you got a good fire going, and get, have a small fire shovel and just, shovel a big pile of coals. Yep. and put a good grill grate, I'll take 2 bricks with me and a little fucking grill grate camping and make shit on there. I mean, to me, that's as good a flavor as you can find, but I'm always looking for little high-end fucking grill grates that you can take with you and just throw over a fucking pile of coals to do that. Would you say that that's probably the best company to get something like that?
Yeah, those are really good. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to getting a small grill grate, like you said, and even putting those would sit right on top of something. They interlock. They're usually about 3 pieces and they slide together. So depending on what you're putting it on, you may need a surface to hold them flat. So you might still need that actual cheaper grate and then put them on top of it. Another good option is people take charcoal chimneys, load them up with charcoal, and just put that grate right on top of that. Yeah,
I've seen people do that. I've not. Well, I guess I have tried that once, but it was it fucking didn't turn out very well. I ended up knocking shit over and whatever. To me, you can't go wrong by putting 2 fucking bricks on the ground, two fire bricks, and throwing a little grate over the top of it with a pile of coals between them. But
another thing we didn't add was a plancha top. So I've got a mill scale grill in production right now that's just it's a standalone basically metal frame of charcoal, and then you put all these different grilling surfaces on it. And so just to kind of prove my point about liking different things, I have an entire grill grate being built for it. I have 2 half grill grates being built. I have 2 half planchas, 2 full planchas. So I love having the solid surface, smashing burgers on it. And so,
do you have a griddle also?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a built-in Blaze flat top. I'm outdoor kitchen. So, we can short order cook breakfast on it, or I can smash burgers or sear steak on it or whatever. I'm a wannabe Waffle House cook.
That's fucking great. Is there a surface or grill grate that that's basically kind of the worst option in terms of adding flavor or being effective?
The thin stuff. So I hate the really thin sheet metal. You're going to end up burning through it. People end up rusting them, and they don't clean it right, and your food tastes like shit.
Yeah. Okay.
Invest a little money and get something sturdy.
Yeah. Amen. All right. So we've kind of gone over a lot of the specifics in terms of what you're cooking with, charcoal, wood, etc. Talked a little bit about your outdoor kitchen. Can you walk us through your outdoor kitchen and kind of what you recommend people to have if they want to get into it?
It's not fair. My outdoor kitchen's pretty badass.
Yeah. Do you have pictures of it on your social media?
I'll have to throw some up for you. I do, but they're back a little bit. Yeah. So we moved in this house. We bought a house that was built in 1896, plantation style looking house, and
fucking haunted or what?
100%. I don't believe in ghosts, and there's stuff I can't explain in that house. Yeah. There's stuff going. They don't mess with the outdoor kitchen though. They're all contained inside. Yeah. But I had this idea that I wanted to build what I keep calling a teaching kitchen. Like, I live in Waxahachie. I don't live in Dallas proper. And how could I convince you to come all the way to Waxahachie? And so I got referred to a builder that built me a really rustic, stone, huge, oversized cedar beam kitchen. So it's 2 walls are solid, stone, floor to ground. The rest is open. And inside of it, I have I have a stoned in 5-foot offset stick burner. I have a 5-foot Santa Maria that we talked about. That's the island. I have originally I had cutouts for big green eggs. Then when I changed partners, I changed that out. But I have slots for eggs. I have the Blaze flat top we mentioned. I have a Lynx Napoli oven. It's like a $5,000 pizza oven, basically.
Do you use that much?
Not as much, not $5,000 worth at all. Like, it's really cool. Like, if you come over and we have like a little pizza party, cool. But it takes, luckily it's not huge, but it's what gets used the least. Although it is badass. It's just a super niche cooker.
Does it not? I mean, I'm assuming it would. Like, that's one of those labor intensive. Getting it to where you can use it to cook is why it doesn't get used a lot. Does it take a while to get?
No, well, so it looks like you see these people that have these brick dome pizza ovens and they have fire, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Well, this thing has burners on the side, and so it'll get to temp pretty quick. But it's like, it's an oven, which, okay, at the end of the day, smokers are ovens, right? So I've got 30 other ovens that are bigger and more usable. So how often do we make pizza? And I can put a cast iron skillet. I can make biscuits, cinnamon rolls. I've put steak in it. I can do other things with it, but it's just kind of small. I wouldn't go spend $5,000. I love it, and I'm not bashing. It's amazing. I just don't use it that much.
Yeah. Speaking of cast iron, that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you is there a brand that's a good high end, already seasoned. I mean, I know Lodge is probably the most popular, and it says that it's seasoned, but fuck, it's not.
Right.
I think I saw an ad for, I think it's called like Smithy or something like that. I mean, is there a, hey, I don't give a shit what it costs. I want a fucking cast iron that's like ready to use and super high quality. It's already polished and smoothed out. Does that exist?
I mean, I think what you said is right. Lodge is I can go on Amazon or go to my grocery store and get a $15, $20 pan. But yeah, Finex out of the Pacific Northwest, it's a FINEX. They're gorgeous. So it's a really pretty pan, with like probably cast iron, reach out and grab them, you burn your hands. So they've got, the type of handle on it. You can actually pick it up and handle it. They're really pretty. So, if you're going to spend a few $100s, but it's American made, it's gorgeous. Like, and
it's polished out smooth.
Yeah, it's good.
Is it already seasoned or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. That's good to know.
I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is seasoned. So don't quote me on that, but I think so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I wanted to get into just some methods. We've already kind of talked about them to a certain extent, but just some of the nuances of where do you see people as they're just starting out, like fuck up the most, or, what words of advice for, whether it's smoking or, cooking in general, like what are some of kind of the key things that you see people screw up that you can, offer them some advice, myself included, to not have to learn the hard way?
I think the number one thing is, people aren't patient enough and they don't give it enough time. And there's a lot of things I could say to go into that, whether it be the prep or the cook. The biggest thing is the cook. I get the phone call saying, okay, brisket tasted good, but it was tough. Well, you didn't cook it long enough. You didn't cook it till it was tender. And that's number one. But it takes the actually putting thought into what you're doing approach to get it right. So I share with people, so we use this Saturday example all the time. You're going to cook a brisket on a Saturday. Well, it's okay to come home Friday night, crack open a beer, and trim your brisket down, season it if you want. You don't have to. Get the BS work out of the way, put it in the fridge, because nothing worse than waking up at 5 a.m. being like, oh, I got to go trim a brisket. I haven't had my coffee. So just do the meaningless prep stuff. Or same thing with the tailgate. If you're going to go tailgate on Sunday, get all the piddly crap out of the way. Season your chicken wings, put them in marinade in a Ziploc bag. Be ready to cook when it's time to cook, and allow yourself enough time. Barbecue is obviously something that requires a lot of time and patience, and people don't give it enough time. I'm serious. A Saturday deal will be like, hey, I've got people coming over in an hour and the brisket's not done. What do I do? I'm like, you have to finish it. You have to finish it the right way. You can't pull it now or it's going to suck. The number one thing is they don't give enough time, and I lost on Pitmasters because I ran short of time. It's my own fault, and my brisket was tough. End of story.
Yeah. Is there a crutch or a save time-wise? I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me, just from a kind of a broad spectrum cooking standpoint, is let's say, you're at that point, hey, you got an hour left, but it's probably 3 or 4 hours left, knowing that that's what it's going to take to smoke it. Is it sacrilege to take that and put it, say, cover it in foil, throw it in the oven, at 350 for an hour and finish it that way? Is that?
No. I mean, that's what you got to do, because, and I use that tool in my events all the time. I mean, so let's answer your question first. Yes, wrap it in foil, crank the temperature. If the thing is already smoked, like a meat only takes on so much smoke. So if you're past the 165 internal stage, you're wrapped anyway. Crank the temperature, and you can go pretty high. I mean, you can get in the 300s and get up there and get it done, because, again, don't try to have your brisket. If your party's at 5, don't be shooting to have your brisket done at 5. Shoot to have your brisket done at 2.
Yeah.
So that it can rest. But you can absolutely crank it. I mean, I'll go to events, and let's say we're making like brisket burn-ins and they're not tender enough. We say foil them, put them in, get those suckers tender. Things get tender after 200 big cuts, right? So foil that thing, steam it, get it tender, and then go from there.
Yeah. Always foil, cover it instead of the butcher paper.
Well, that's if you're in a hurry to get it tender, because if you go back to when we talked about brisket, when you get to 165, if you wrap in paper one and beside it you wrap one in foil, the foil one's going to get done quicker because you're steaming the meat, right? That's your shortcut. So you're losing the bark on the brisket, but you're getting it done quicker. If you wrapped in paper and crank the temperature, you'd likely just dry it out. You're not steaming it. That paper, the whole reason you use paper, it's permeable. So that bark stays, but you're not steaming it, right? Yeah. It's just still linearly going up, and you'll probably dry it out.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you know temperature wise, at what point is that butcher block going to fucking start on fire? Do you know?
That's a good question. It's pretty high. I mean, higher than you would be taking it.
Not 212 where most shit's going to burn.
Yeah, no.
All right. So one question I did have that I struggle with too, and my take on, for, everybody listening, like you want to get into barbecue or whatever, like a decent pellet grill to start, would you say that that's, kind of the best thing to get to start fucking around with? Or
you just got to ask yourself questions. Like, people will say, if I could only buy one grill, would I buy? And I get asked that a lot too. And when I first got into this, I felt like you picked one grill or the other. And like, I bought a Big Green Egg when I couldn't afford to be spending $1,000 on a grill. A lot of people now are buying two. It's really hard for me to say this is the one. And, I get, because I was with one company, went to the other, I'll say, is one better than the other? And that's not why I did it. I just say, okay, well, let me ask you some questions. And I get into, are you busy? Kind of, what are you looking to do? And some people like the versatility of like a Kamado cooker, and they don't mind manually adjusting these vents. It's like, okay, do you want to run a fire, right? Mm-hmm. So with my stick burners, my Kamados, I have to know how to build the coal bed, the fire, and run the fire and keep the temperature gauge where I want it, all manually. Number one, are you cool with that, right? Then once you get it going, what do? Are you normally messing with it? Are you leaving? How often are you doing this? Is this the once a month cook, or is this something you want to cook on 14 times a month? Yeah. So I poke a couple questions, and I won't tell you which one to pick. I'll just say, well, here's the differences. So on the pellet grill side, and this is important, I think, for everybody, why have they become so popular? And it kind of is what you just said. If I take you to a barbecue joint and you have the most amazing barbecue you ever had, and you're like, dude, I want to start making that. Well, a pellet grill is certainly the easiest way to get you there, because you can set the temperature and it'll do that for you. So now that fire management thing, that's one less major thing you have to do. Now you can focus on the protein, the meat that's in there, or it can be like, I'm going to go make this amazing potato salad instead of messing with my fire, whatever, elevate some other piece of your dish. Go hang out with your kids. Or, I've given this example 10,000 times this year. Here's what a pellet grill will give you on a Saturday. I'd love to make a brisket with you all on my stick burner, but we got to throw a stick in it every 45 minutes, which is great, right? We'll sit there, drink beer, have a good time. Well, unfortunately, in 2019, I got to go to my daughter's soccer game at 10.
Yeah.
Then I got to go to my son's, basketball game at noon. Then I got to roll to Home Depot, right? Blah, blah, blah. And so I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
There aren't many Saturdays that I can throw the sticks on the stick burner. And so with a Traeger, I can look at my app, I can know exactly what the grill's at, and I can mess with it and change it. So it's just kind of like, what do you want to do? What's good for you? I would love it if people buy multiple, because I use honestly, even though I rep and promote a brand really hard, I use different tools at different times, right? Just depending on what's going on.
Yeah. No, I think those are all good points. I know, I've tried a lot of different things too, and I find myself using the pellet smoker probably the most, for all of those same reasons.
You probably love all your, like, I love all my cookers, and I think they're all different fun things. But what my pellet allows me to do is what you said. It allows me to cook with that sort of thing more often, because I can go do other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a lot of the fire management thing is its own fucking expertise in and of itself, and that's notwithstanding everything else, so, and that's one of those things. It's a skill that I think takes a fair bit of fucking up before you really understand how to do it.
Man, it's bigger than you think too. It's one thing to get, let's just say that you're trying to cook at 250. Well, okay, you got to master that needle being at 250, but not only that, you got to master the fire running clean. Mm-hmm. So if you ever walk up to any sort of smoker, whatever it is, and you see a bunch of thick white smoke coming out, that's a dirty fire. Yeah, and it tastes like shit.
Yeah, you're looking for the real light, almost blue hint.
Like you don't even want to see it. Yeah, basically.
Well, and so to me, on the stick burner side, I learned the hard way. I have a Yoder side by side, but it's the smallest one they make. It was a huge fucking mistake, for the simple reason of that, the actual tube itself is small and the firebox is small. So the two huge problems I have with that is, one is keeping it at a low enough temperature, because everything is so small, to keep a good bed of coals and everything going and burning clean, you have to have a certain size fucking fire. And so two things happens. One, it's a bitch to keep the temperature down. And number two is that you're having to feed that thing almost fucking constantly, small pieces all the time to keep, just enough good smoke going to where it gets the job done and keep the temperature low enough. Cause it's hard to keep it under 300, honestly, because it's so fucking small. I wish I had bought a much bigger one, volume-wise or circumference-wise, with a much bigger box. Not that I want to smoke, 30 fucking briskets at once. It's just from a fire management standpoint, it's a real bitch to keep it under control. But all right, so that's good shit. One just piece of advice I guess I'm curious of is chicken. Cooking chicken on or smoking chicken. Some people are very good at it. I'm not one of them. For me, that's another bit of an Achilles heel of, because it's a lean, super lean meat, and generally they're not very big pieces. Thighs are easier to not fuck up because they're darker and fattier. But is there some advice you can offer on cooking chicken on a pellet smoker, or getting a good smoky chicken without fucking drying it?
Yeah, I mean, so let's talk about a couple different pieces of chicken. That's a great question. So let's go chicken breast, because that's what people cook during the week a lot, and they mess up. Go back to the instant read thermometer. USDA says, chicken's done at 165. You don't have to take it to 165, but you damn sure better not take it past 165. So what I do is in the thickest part of the chicken, I'm pulling my chicken off, check with my instant read thermometer in the high 150s, I'm pulling it. So maybe even 155. I'm not trying to get your family sick, so y'all choose how low you want to pull it off, but you're going to dry chicken out at 165 on. In anything you're cooking, smoking, when you pull the meat off, it's going to continue to increase in internal temperature 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees. So even if I was going to 165, I'd pull it at 160, but I like to pull it more in the higher 150s to make sure that it's still juicy. That'll keep you from drying it out. So that's on white meat. Like you said, the dark meat's a lot more forgiving. You can take chicken wings and thighs even higher if you wanted to, and you really can't dry those out. I buy a lot of whole chickens, and I'm about to put a video out for this where I take chicken shears and I just cut the backbone out, split it open, put a little incision above the breastbone, push it down, pop that out, and I've got like 2 half chickens if I cut it in half or just leave it together. I love cooking a whole chicken like that.
It's basically spatchcock.
It's spatchcock, but it's $5. So it's the cheapest way to buy chicken. When it's done, it's easy to pull it apart. But there's the biggest quandary I have in cooking. When you smoke a chicken, the skin's not going to be crispy. And at my house, they're like, well, that's rubbery. Well, the lower you cook it, the more rubbery it's going to be. You can, cook more like 325, try to crisp it a little bit. But I cook a ton. I go buy this all-natural whole chicken, spatchcock it. I love to brine it for a couple hours. And pull it, in the 157, 8 degrees, and it's not going to be dry.
Yeah.
Another thing, let me add one more thing about chicken, is my latest thing I've been doing a ton of is smoke fried chicken. So I take wings, smoke them until they're probably more like 175, pull them off, and then flash fry them.
Oh, shit.
Super good.
If you're cooking breasts or thighs, or if you're smoking them on a pellet smoker, what temperature are you usually doing that at?
So almost all of my recipes are at 275 just for consistency. But if you're not trying to look for like the most amazing appearance, then I go like 325. So my grilling is usually 325, 350. So if this is a Tuesday night chicken breast, then I'm those temperatures. Yeah. If I'm trying to make sure the skin on a half chicken is perfectly intact, I won't go more than 325 so it doesn't pop. But like just for your normal cooking, I think 325 is good.
The chicken a little higher than everything else.
Yeah. Okay. Just because I'm trying to get it a little more crispy.
Yeah. Even on straight breasts?
I'm in the 300 zone grilling because it just reminds me of like the days that I did have a gas grill in college and what'd you turn it up to? And, you didn't need to cook that low because I'm not trying to impart a ton of flavor into it. I cheat on chicken because I go buy cheap marinades and like those Lowry marinades, they put them on sale 4 times a year and I load up on them. And then so my midweek meals are often chicken breasts in a Ziploc bag with some marinade in it because it puts a ton of flavor in it.
And then you'll smoke those at 325 for 45, 50 minutes.
Not very long, yeah.
And it stays pretty juicy if you pull it at high 150.
Yeah, so like those, again, I don't care if people get the Lowry marinade, but those things end up being like $1 something with a coupon or $3 without, something like that. They've got all these different flavors, like the classic Italian, lemon pepper, whatever. Put it in the Ziploc bag for at least an hour. I mean, a lot of times I'll prep early in the week and just put a bunch of that in my fridge, get home, pull it out, throw it on the grill. Even without seasoning, there's a ton of flavor in it, and it's super juicy. So marinating like that absolutely makes chicken more juicy than just straight out of the package. It's a game changer. I'll like rarely just take a chicken breast and throw it with seasoning on. Like I want it to soak in something.
Yeah, 325 is the magic.
That's what I do. Yeah.
That's good to know. I know I've fucked up God knows how many pieces of chicken on a grill trying to get that good balance. You talked about marinades. I did want to talk a little bit about injections and brines. I am a big fan of brines. To me, injections have never fucking worked in my benefit. I know you have some of them. Obviously, you're a fan of them. Can you talk about both of them, things to avoid, why they work, or how to best make them work?
Yeah. So ignore what I just said about the Lowry stuff, because I'll go a little different direction with this for just a second. So normally I say when you cook, listen, because we're going to go the barbecue route now, so not just grilling a chicken. So that's why it's a little different. So when I go to make barbecue, I think, all right, I'm going to do 3 things to this potentially. I'm going to inject it or brine it or marinate it. I'm going to season it, and at the end I may sauce it. So I kind of think, what am I going to do? I don't want to know my plan before I start. But when I'm brining or injecting in barbecue, I'm doing it to impart moisture. I'm not putting a bunch of flavor. So the Lowry's marinades, obviously very flavored, like lemon pepper. That thing's going to taste like lemon pepper. My injections, so I have a beef, a pork, and a chicken, or my brine, which I market towards poultry, but there's no poultry flavor. You could be used for anything. Those are all based to put moisture in the meat. The chicken has a chicken and butter flavor. The pork has a pork flavor, and the beef has a beef flavor. So it enhances that flavor, but that's because those are geared towards a competition customer, really. I don't normally advocate people do it in their backyard. You can, but I don't think you need to. Like if you came to my house tomorrow and I made you a brisket, I would not inject the brisket. It's just not the traditional way. But I have people call me and say, man, I need to wow my friends, should I inject it? And I say, well, sure. If you want to put, add a little element to it, go for it. My injections have MSG in them. It's the only thing I have that has MSG in it, but that's because I'm trying to hit you with that flavor. Yeah. Because in competition, that's what you got to do. But again, it's just to put a little more moisture in it, to not only keep it from drying out, but just to make it a little juicier. So,
do your brines have MSG in them? No,
my brine does not. My brine is very simple. It's very old school. It was the last product I released. I mixed it by hand and used it in competition forever. And one day I thought, why the heck am I not selling this? Yeah, it's really good. But no, it's all natural.
For the brines, like especially Thanksgiving or Christmas turkey or something like that, can you just talk about the essence of brine in general?
Yeah, and I think extremely important. Turkey's a big piece of poultry. That's the major video I have on my channel right now is actually about that. So I take big turkey, use my brine, and it's again nothing crazy with flavor, but you can add to it. So I use a big Yeti 5-gallon loadout bucket, drop the turkey in it with water in the brine, and if people want to add to it, then they can put in citrus, herbs, whole peppercorns, whatever, if they want to adjust the flavor. But I'm thinking, take that big piece of meat, pretty high temperature, sensitive. You talked about how you've dried some things out. Well, I want to give people the best shot not to do that. And I don't want to remind myself of eating my grandmother's turkey when I was 8 years old and it was all dried out of the oven, right? Like it's got to be juicy. Yeah. Well, plus now we don't, people don't eat turkey for Thanksgiving. Now they eat like prime rib. So if you're going to put a turkey next to that prime rib, it dang sure better be good.
Yeah. Are you typically brining like 24 hours?
I'll put it in and just brine it overnight usually. So like just prep it at night and pull it out the next day. Yeah. So it's probably not quite 24 hours, but it could be 12 to 18.
Yeah. Have you been successful with a big fucking brine turkey on a pellet grill?
Oh yeah. The video I mentioned, that's exactly what I did. I wasn't successful with the haters that came out and said, why is that grill not smoking? But yeah, so I think Kamados and pellet grills make really pretty turkeys. Yeah. So if you were to take a turkey and put it on an offset with like traditional heavy wood, they come out a lot darker. I think they're best on a pellet or a Kamado. And
so for a full turkey that's been brined overnight on a pellet smoker, what wood are you using and what temperature and for how long typically? I know it's going to depend on temp, but just ballpark.
So on these, I'm going to go down and I'm going to go opposite of beef. I want to go lighter wood. So I think pecan is fantastic. I mean, hickory would work. You could use an alder. You could use some fruit woods because you think about the skin. I want it to be really pretty at Thanksgiving. Yeah. So I don't want it to be dark. If you put a turkey in like I said, an offset and you had like an oak, it would get quite dark. And I don't want it to be that dark. I try to not buy real big turkeys. I try to buy the 13-ish pounders. And, I plan for about 3 hours at 275.
Yeah. So sticking with 275.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't care if people bump up or down. Here's what I say. Like, if you want to cook lower, then just add time to your recipe. If you want to cook hotter, no, you'll cook it quicker. The hotter you cook, the more it could get away from you. But I'm not real passionate about it must be 225, it must be 325. To me, there's no difference in 225 to 275. It's just kind of what you want to do other than time.
Yeah.
But I should have told you this up front, but as I started watching people cook hotter and hotter and realized they could have great results. And so I kind of tried to find the happy medium. I thought, all right, well, where can I go where I don't just have to watch it constantly and make sure my skin don't pull back? And so I just kind of met in the middle and said, this is going to be the basis of what I do.
Yeah. For a full-size turkey, where are you probing that for the leave-in thermometer? Where are you putting that at?
I put it in the breast, which is the last thing to be done, so people need to keep that in mind. I will take the thermopin, chicken or turkey, I do the same thing. I've always checked in the joint between the leg and the thigh, and I check in the breast. Oh, I don't know why I've always done that, but that gives me a couple spots to check it.
Yeah, same 158, 160.
Yeah, definitely don't go all the way to 165. Yeah. A little bit less to make sure you don't dry it out.
Yeah. So if you brine it overnight, are you seasoning it with anything or just?
Yeah, totally. I'm in the seasoning business.
Yeah.
Of course I'm seasoning it with something.
Yeah.
This honey hog is super good, very pretty. The Gospel with a black label, super pretty. The D's Nuts Honey Pecan, really good on.
Now, where did that name come from?
Have a few too many drinks in the pool, listening to 90s hip hop music with my friends.
That was one of the things I had written down, actually, was there's so many funny names. There's like a funny name culture in the barbecue world, like with rubs and sauces. And
I actually trademarked that.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, I have the trademark for D's Nuts.
God, that's hilarious. Fucking Snoop Dogg would be jealous, huh?
Yeah.
So that, okay, well, so that's good advice on the turkey. And from an actual flavor standpoint, what would you say is the best for that savory Thanksgiving turkey to season it with on top of the brine?
So either the Gospel, my Southwestern all-purpose, is probably really pretty, or the honey hog. Those are both great choices. Okay. And then you can decide if you want to add something at the end. Sometimes I'll glaze with honey. I'll warm honey up, just lightly drizzle that. It's kind of good. It's really good. Or something that's really cool, favorite product of mine, Texas pepper jelly. They make these things called rib candies. It's like liquefied pepper jelly. They have all these different flavors like apple, habanero, whatever. So I use a cranberry habanero at Thanksgiving and just drizzle it on the turkey. It's super good.
Yeah, sure, that sounds good.
A little topper.
Yeah. It seems like there's been a significant boom in the barbecue world in terms of interest in this country in, say, the last 10 years or so. What would you attribute that to?
I don't really know the major driver, but you're right. It's on, 5 years, it's on fire. And I don't someone said recently, chefs are the new rock stars. And I don't disagree with that. People want to go to 5-star restaurants and whatnot. Everybody wants to call themselves a foodie. People love to eat. But the thing that I have found, one of the things that's most interesting, I got into it because, like I said earlier, I got time on my hands. I can mess with it at home. And it seems like a lot of people do that. But now the barbecue restaurants are exploding, and it's not like they're all just making brisket ribs chicken. This whole new school movement of tweaking things is blowing up. So people are cooking new cuts. Like in Austin, a friend of mine, Evan, he owns Leroy and Lewis. He calls his new school barbecue. He doesn't serve brisket normally on his menu. He smokes beef cheek and slices it. He cooks it confit style. So he smokes the cheek, and then instead of just putting it in some sort of braising liquid, he puts it in rendered beef fat. And so it's so rich, and he serves slices of that, right? And it's this big, but people get it and they think it's amazing. Like, who would have thought of that? You go to Billy Durney's Hometown Barbecue in New York, and he's a James Beard semifinalist, for the things that he's doing. And he's taken, instead of just serving ribs, he has Korean sticky ribs. For an homage back to a place that he ate growing up there in Brooklyn. He's got all these different flavors like that just blow you away. And so again, it's not just going down the road and getting your standard thing that you've been getting your whole life. There's a twist on it. I don't like that word fusion, but it's just different and unique. And Fort Worth right now is about to just catch on fire with the new barbecue joints they have coming in, and there's 6 of them that are out of this world, and everything a little bit unique. One guy's serving all of his tacos, instead of just a normal tortilla, it's a tortilla he makes in brisket fat. It'll change your life. So I just think it's the cool things people are doing right now, and how there's so many there's so many chefs in barbecue, like classically trained chefs that have moved over into barbecue, and they're adding their thing to it. So it's just elevating it all, that it's just so good and new and different.
Yeah. I think it's really neat. I mean, again, it's something I've gotten into pretty heavy over the last decade or so, purely as a hobby, but similarly, because who the fuck doesn't love to eat?
Yeah.
And especially like there is a level of satisfaction that's real and hard to beat when you put time and effort into making something and somebody's like, holy shit, that's good. I mean, it's positive reinforcement essentially, just like in a lot of elements of dog training. But I can only assume that, YouTube and the internet and social media, just like with everything that's gotten popular, that's played a huge role in your ability to do it. I know, historically, let's say 20, 25 years ago, you didn't have so many resources at your fingertips to be able to learn from people. It was fucking things up on your own, and there just wasn't near the information that's out there that there is now. For people that want to get started into, getting into this, what is your advice for them to get started, both from a setup standpoint? I know you talked a little bit about it, depends on what your goals are, but just kind of, broad spectrum, or generally speaking, how to get started in getting into barbecue and figuring it out.
And, first thing, you got to figure out what sort of cooker works for you. Go get that. Don't ask your wife, just go get it, and then feed her something good, and she'll be cool with it. So, figure out what cooker you want. And then I look back to me, like, what was my deal? Well, I wanted to learn, and I couldn't. I don't get nervous, but it was like, I was afraid to fail in certain things. Like, I didn't want to go buy an expensive steak. I didn't want to no way I'd buy a rib roast to make a prime rib. Those things, I'd screw all those things up. But I always say the only wrong way to do barbecue is to not do it. You don't have to buy this piece of meat and use this seasoning and this sauce to make it great. There's so much latitude in what you do, and you just have to like it. And so people just got to get out and do it. And I'm not trying to give a generic answer. So many resources out there now. But for me, it was put on there, try it, and see what was possible. And I always thought, what's different? You don't have to be different. You could cook what somebody else is cooking. If you just want the tried and true stuff, there's so many resources out there. I'm super accessible, and I'll help you get it there. But find the cooker that works, and then just make stuff on it. And you actually said it a few seconds ago. I think one of the things that fueled me early was I had a lot of people saying that it looked good, it tasted good, and it's like, why do you go open a restaurant other than you want to make money? A chef wants to hear you say, this is the most amazing thing I've ever had in my life. So the minute somebody sits at your table and they eat your ribs and say, dude, those are the best ribs I've ever had in my life, you're like, okay, I'm hooked, right?
Yeah.
And then I've just kind of rolled from there. But just get out and do it, and try it and tweak it and do what you think is right. Use the ingredients in your kitchen. Go to the grocery store and look at what inspires you and be like, you know what, I'm going to cook beef cheek today, and go try it.
Yeah. To me, one of the best pieces of advice, and this isn't even just specific to barbecue, is don't be afraid to fuck something up.
Totally.
But
let me give you a steak example. So I tell people that I was a steak snob before a barbecue guy, and that's why I give you the example of wouldn't buy expensive steak. I used to go to Bob's Steak and Chop House in Dallas, the original one, and with buddies after work, and we'd buy a steak, and I was like, dude, this is unbelievable, and I wanted to do it. But I was a guy that was throwing a steak on a gas grill, no thermometer, and just cutting it open with a knife to see what it looked like. I mean, that's the dumbest thing you could possibly do. And then once I got 2 or 3 tips, I was like, okay, if I screw it up, I can order pizza and I can go on and just go with it. And my wife is my toughest critic. I mean, rarely does she say that was good. And it's good for me because she keeps me on my game.
Yeah.
She told me my food was good 2 nights ago, and I was like, what did you say?
Have another wine, sweetheart. Yeah. So speaking of steak, one thing I did want to ask that I'm curious about, we talked about most people not being able to tell the difference between a decent prime and a high-end Wagyu. I know for me, I've turned into a bit of a steak snob that way. Like, I won't usually go to steakhouses other than there's Pappas Brothers, which is damn good. What's the name of that other fucking place? It's got two names. Do you remember?
Del Frisco's, Albernays.
I've been to Albernays. I've been to Del Frisco's in New York and one down in Houston, but I'm trying to think of the name. Maybe it'll come to me. There's another place in the Dallas area that I went.
Ruth's Chris.
No,
that's too low.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. But at any rate, there's a place in Vegas that has really good Wagyu that I think it's not Gordon's Joint, but Wolfgang's. I think it's called Steak or Cut or something like that. But anyway, I guess my point is that, I've definitely grown accustomed to having a specific taste for really, really heavily marbled, super rich, Wagyu, whether it's New York strip or whatever. But one thing that I don't see a lot of is aged Wagyu. And I'm curious why that is. I know there are places that have it, but as popular as Wagyu has become, and as popular as say Pat LaFreda's dry aging process, in my opinion, I haven't had anywhere that did a better job at dry aging. You rarely see well dry aged Wagyu beef. Is it because it's too much?
That's what I need to ask that question of like John Tizar in Dallas, who's like the dry aging king around here. And I don't know. I've always assumed it was the cost. But I don't know if that's the case or not, right? Because you can take a 44 Farms, Heart brand beef, whatever, and age a pretty expensive piece of meat anyway. And after the aging process, what the price is. So I always thought that I've assumed that it's the cost, not the taste, because you definitely think there would be a market for it. Whereas a super aged steak is expensive anyway. That's not, the crazy higher marbled stuff. So
I guess maybe because typically Wagyu is sold by the ounce, and the aging process, you're losing several ounces. Right. Yeah, I don't know, but
it's super expensive.
To me, I do wonder if there's an element of a point where it's actually too fucking rich. Because I've certainly had like the Snake River gold grade beef ribs. In my opinion, like the black grade is perfect. The gold is actually they're fucking too rich.
Yeah.
But speaking of types of meats, purveyors of meat, there are a lot of them out there. We've already mentioned Snake River, Pat LaFreda, talked about Creekstone, 44 Farms. There was a buddy of mine, Robert Lerma, but you probably know him.
I was at Lerma's house 2 weekends ago.
Oh shit!
That was the grill I was cooking on at 1,000 degrees.
Oh no shit! Well, so I remember he was mentioning something or posted about a specific crowd cow fucking olive fed Wagyu. Have you had that?
Yeah, I've had it.
So do you notice is there a noticeable difference between olive fed Wagyu and non?
It didn't blow. It was really good.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. It's super marbled. So, but I didn't put it next to, I hadn't had Wagyu in a while when I had it. So to be honest, I couldn't be like, oh, it was that much better.
Yeah.
But it was really good. They sent me steak and ground beef, which people told me the burgers were the best they'd ever had off that. So there's something to it. Yeah.
So it was Wagyu. It was the olive fed Wagyu.
Well, because they messed up. They had agreed they were going to send me some steak, and they sent me ground beef. And then I was like, hey, hold on. You told me the steaks were coming.
Yeah. One of the things that seems pretty popular here is the mixing of Angus and Wagyu. How in tune are you with the importation of Wagyu and kind of on a broad scale, I guess? Do you see any potential of purveyors in this country being able to import it? I'm assuming they probably won't allow it, but actually bringing breeding females over here and starting programs.
I'm not the meat purveyor guy to like the solid expertise, but this has just been my perspective. And I was at 44 Farms on Monday and talking about their genetics, and there's a major cost to doing certain things. And so in most of these operations, other than Creekstone, that's just gigantic. These guys are like, a lot of these, like if you go buy steaks from somebody, so let's just say 44, all the cattle aren't theirs. They're in a market, right? They're using other farmers that are following their program that have to meet certain standards. And then, so it's called 44 steaks, when they sell it. A lot of people are that way. I work with E3 out of Fort Scott, Kansas. They have a network of farms they work with, all never ever products that meet their protocol. I've got a friend here raising all Wagyu cattle. I think what people are doing is they're saying, all right, I got this black Angus herd. I'm going to go buy this Wagyu bull, and I'm going to mate these things together, and I'm going to have obviously a much superior product. And if you're going down the never ever product, in order to do that, there's a massive cost with this. If this one heifer falls out and dies, well, you couldn't treat it, and on it's gone, your costs have gone up. I think you add all those things in. I think that's what's prohibiting people from, having like this like super upper echelon Wagyu, and plus what's the market for it. So I think costs are a huge factor in it.
Yeah. Not unlike anything in business is that, a handful of people demanding something or inquiring about it doesn't necessarily justify changing your business model to it, which that's true in any business. Do you know, does Snake River have that same kind of arrangement where they've got a network of farms?
I don't know. I don't know that they do. They have a gigantic ranch. I was actually supposed to go up there and see it this month. They'll offer you that invite when you final off their brisket at a world championship.
Yeah, no shit.
But I kind of think they don't. I think their stuff is all there, but I'm not positive.
Yeah. Are there any other meat purveyors that we haven't mentioned that you would recommend to people if they're looking to kick it up a notch, so to speak?
So the ones we've talked about, are some of the big boys. I mean, but this is what I give you a more generic message. I tell people if possible, it's cool to know your rancher, or at least know where your beef comes from or how it was treated. Not everybody's going to know Billy Bob Rancher, 2 states away. But the whole reason I started working with a certain meat company was because I know how the cattle is fed. I know, I know everything about it. I know how it's finished. I know it's humanely treated. That all makes a huge difference. Like when I go to 44 Farms and visit it, you see, they're babied. These things are babied, so they're low stress. When you finally wean the calf off the mama, they're not putting them in pens a mile away. They're developed a certain type of fence so that the calf can't suck off mama, but can touch noses and have less stress. And so, what they do from beginning to end is completely thought out, and it makes a huge difference. The reason I started working with E3, owned by Adam LaRoche, was he wanted to know what his family was eating. Again, not practical for everybody. Some people are just like, I'm going to go buy what Costco has, and there's very reputable places. But I think it makes a gigantic difference to know what the animal was fed, how it was treated, and it results in taste, a lot. So we covered the big ones, but, if possible, know the history, where it comes from. Align with a cool butcher if possible. That goes along with this. I like to know where everything came from is what I do.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree at all. And to me, the humane thing, I agree, is a big fucking deal. I think most people, with very, very few sociopath fucking exceptions, abhor, mass farming conditions and seeing cows getting picked up by forklifts and shit like that nobody wants their food to come from there. Obviously, the tricky part of having 7 billion people, that most of which eat meat on this planet, makes it a challenge to do that. But that's a whole nother fucking podcast. But all right. So are there any resources, barbecue groups, schools, online or otherwise, that you can point people in that direction to, as they want to get into it or further expand their knowledge base in barbecue, to attend or check out?
Yeah, I can kind of tell you what I've done and what I do, and so I look at books for people that I respect and look up to, and like Tuffy Stone was a judge of mine on Pitmasters, and now we're friends, and he has an amazing, one of the most gorgeous, you turn the pages, one of the most gorgeous books you'll ever see, and he's an example of a classically trained chef that does barbecue, so his stuff's amazing. You'll learn a lot from that. Franklin, as you mentioned earlier, he's got a couple really good books. His barbecue book's more of a story. It's awesome. So there's those kind of coffee table things that you can start with. Tons of stuff on the internet. I think people, it's interesting. There's good and bad in it. So you get a certain type of cooker. There's Facebook pages for every cooker out there, right? There's a Big Green Egg Barbecuers page. There's a Traeger Grill owners page, and they're interesting. I think everybody goes there to learn, and then you got your, assholes on there that think they know everything, that criticize everything you do. But I think one of the reasons we've done so well is people that are involved in Meat Church, whether it's tagging us with something they cooked that we made, or asking me questions, commenting on my stuff. It's all positive, right? Like you could burn a rack of ribs tomorrow and say use one of my rubs, and I wouldn't say, hey, you burned that. I don't care, right? It doesn't matter. Just being super positive about it. I don't really use forums anymore in barbecue. They're kind of gone on. It's pretty much social media, and is kind of where most things are now. I don't know of any like real big active forums that people are using. There are a couple massive Facebook pages that people can leverage. And if you're here in Texas, there's North Texas Barbecue Addicts page. It's crazy. This page went from 0 to 32,000 people in a year, and that's a pretty cool resource. So tons of social resources now.
Yeah. Are there any schools like that you can actually attend? Not what? Well, I guess actually, is there a good online option, and also are there ones that you recommend to go in person?
Can I give you a little plug here?
Fucking A.
So I think one of the things that's coolest about us is I love to teach, and that's become like a big deal with me. So I teach at least a couple classes a month, and So we'll go back to this outdoor kitchen I built. If you want to come to Texas, I know not everybody listening's from Texas, but we did a class on a Saturday and a Sunday. I limit the ones in my backyard to 40 people, right? Because it's my house. And so 80 students over a weekend. I had people from 18 states and 3 countries.
Oh, shit.
So people come from all over. I had Northern Italy, 2 people from far upper reach of Canada. So anyway, it's a ton of fun. I'm actually about to list. I just agreed to do this thing called BBQ Stars online. So I get asked all the time, when are you going to do online classes? And it's just not something I've gotten to yet. So I got in with a group, me, Tuffy Stone, Harry Sue, David Bosca, Butcher's Barbecue, some well-known barbecue guys. And I think there's 10 of us total. There's some chefs, some barbecue guys. And so if people follow us on social, they'll see there's a window we'll open up in the month of August where you can come buy a subscription and you'll get my classes as well as all my friends that taught it as well. You'll get all of their stuff as well. So that's really cool.
How much does that cost, or will it cost?
It's 200 and something. I can't remember the exact dollar offhand. It's two something.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. We shot mine about 3 weeks ago. It was all day production. They filmed about half of them. The rest are wrapping up, and then it'll go on sale and it'll come out early fall.
And so for that $260, how much content are you getting?
So we each did 8 modules. And so I cooked 3 proteins and sides in a cocktail. I didn't do 8 different things. There was some modules on like rub and things like that. But I did 3 proteins, a side, and a cocktail. So I did 5 items, I guess you would say, plus other stuff. But you'll get everyone else's as well. So there's the guys that run SCA, the steak competition group. They did steaks and prime rib. Tuffy Stone's about to shoot. I mean, you'll get the full gamut, right? They're going to cover all the major meats. And
is each module about an hour, or is there?
No, they're in the minutes. So,
okay.
but they're not. I mean, I think they range. I think they're 10 to 20 minutes per module. But my meat classes are they're closer to an hour.
Yeah, okay.
They're longer. Yeah.
Okay.
Another thing, I bought all the master class stuff recently, but there's not a lot of barbecue stuff in it. Aaron's got his stuff in it, but it's mostly other chef stuff and things like that.
Yeah.
So
the in-house deal that you do at your personal residence backyard, you said it's 40 spots. How long of a class is that, and what does that cost?
So we do, my general class is 5 hours, and I mean, I can talk to you all day, but the reason I do that is I went back to what could you convince your spouse with no problem? Okay, 5 hours is cool, right? So we do 4 meats in 5 hours. So a typical class would be like brisket, pork ribs, beef ribs, pork bellies, and we switch it up. But we always do brisket with burn ends. We do one sort of ribs, and then we change the other 2 things to keep it interesting. And so they start at $189, which is really inexpensive, to be honest with you. They go up to, the most expensive we'd have was $329. I'll bring in another well-known person to teach with me about once a quarter, and we'll collaborate. I'll do 2 meats, they'll do 2 meats. All those backyard classes usually sell out in 24 hours.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we've got other options too that are cheaper, different. I partner with TX Whiskey in Fort Worth, so I go to their whiskey ranch every other month, and we can hold 100 people there. That usually takes a few days to sell out. That's a little less of a class because it's 2 meats. It's $150, but you get a tour of the facility, 3 drinks. It's super cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we're going to host a massive one. I think it's going to be in November. I'm going to do the Meat Church Revival this year. And my current plan that I'm working on is it'll be more of a full day. And we may even do a 2-day. We may do for a certain fee, you come Friday night, you see the prep, you see the briskets go on, whatever, you see a whole hog go on. But then on Saturday, we're going to teach 5 meats, and 4 of them will be taught by other well-known people that fly in for the event. So it'll be kind of like an all-star teaching thing. And I've got a really cool old venue, the Chautauqua Auditorium that was built in 1902 in the park in Waxahachie. So it could hold 1,000 people. We won't go that big, but that'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, that's good shit. Where can people find out more info and sign up for stuff like that?
So I list mine at meatchurch.com. I've got a barbecue classes and appearance tab, and I list it all there. We're just about to list a bunch of new stuff because I just finished a 5-month run of just murderous run. And so we're heading out on family mandated vacation in 2 days, and then I'll come back and roll a schedule out. But if you go to our website, there'll be a pop-up to sign up for the newsletter. That newsletter only exists to tell you about class, and I email that list a day before I list it to the public. So it kind of gives you a jump and the opportunity to get in a class. And then I always put it on social. Everything goes on social the next day. So
yeah, okay. Is that kind of the goal, like big picture 5-10 year plan, is to incorporate more classes and teaching and online and stuff?
That's what I'm most passionate about it. And I try, that's what I try to do the most. And due to, obligations for partners, I have to be here and there. I don't have as much time as I want, but I would love to do it more often than we do because I can't keep up with the demand. And I can't, I traveled to Sweden, Australia, Utah, New York to teach last year, and I have opportunities to do it all the time. I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
There's only one of me, unfortunately.
Speaking of the two places in particular, Sweden and Australia, I know there's a lot of good beef that comes out of Australia. I know when I was there, and granted this was fucking 20 years ago, I was not impressed with the quality of meat. Now, granted, we were in the outback, the Northern Territory area by Darwin, which is a little different than some of the more metropolitan areas probably. But what is your take on the quality of beef that you've gotten out of Australia and Sweden, for that matter?
So both are really unique, and I'll explain that. So American barbecue is on fire in Australia. It's probably outside the U.S. the hottest area for what we do. I had Wagyu brisket. I was teaching brisket when I was there, and steak, and it was super good.
Yeah,
it was butchered a little bit. It came from there, and it looked different because they butcher it a little different, but it was really good.
How do you know what the difference is butcher wise? How it differs?
It was just trimmed. Like if I broke out a Creekstone brisket for you right here, and then one that came from there, they just
the shape and everything, the cut's different.
I was like, what is that? It was almost looked like a shark fin with the point on it.
Tri-tip.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing?
What about Sweden? What was that beef like?
So that's really interesting. The place that I teach at in Sweden, I've been going there for 3 years. They import their beef from the U.S. They're basically trying to be Texas barbecue, and they're doing so. I mean, how crazy is this? I'm teaching barbecue on one of Aaron Franklin's pits over there.
Fucking Sweden.
Yeah. So and I'm really good friends with those guys, and they import a lot of stuff over there. But they do bring me things to cook. So I had they brought me reindeer the first year, which I'm like, boy, my kids are gonna be upset.
Yeah. Fucking eating Rudolph over here.
Yeah. That was good. And they brought some old dairy cow stuff that was weird.
The actual beef.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had any beef that was sourced from Sweden that was
that
good,
dairy cow and that wasn't? But I was getting stuff that was brought to me to do my thing. That dairy cow stuff was from there, and I wasn't like a big fan.
It sounds like it was old.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to make anything old taste good. All right, good shit. So I'm assuming from a social media standpoint, everything is at Meat Church for.
Yeah, it's all the same. It's all at, so Instagram is at Meat Church, Twitter's at Meat Church, Facebook's Meat Church. Try to keep it simple.
Yeah, amen. Well, fucking rock and roll, man. It's been a great chat. Is there anything you want to add to the discussion before we close it out?
I was excited to be here. Different and unique for me. I've done doing podcasts for like the thing right now, but this was actually the one I honestly look most forward to with your background and audience, and so super stoked to take a little bit to let me share my story.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough. You're a wealth of information. I know there are a lot of listeners that I have that are pretty heavy into barbecue, which is pretty neat. So I appreciate you taking the time. Again, shout out to Origin Labs for sponsoring the podcast. Great guys, make her Jocko's products, their own stuff, boots, jeans, etc. Looking to do some stuff with them in the future, as well as obviously teamdog.pet. If you have a dog, sign up for the training. It's $99 for a year. Lots of info in the forums, and I get in there every Monday and interact with you, the audience. So as always, thank you to the listener for putting up with us and paying attention and lending your support. Without you, we could not do what we do. All these Meat Church products that are sitting on the desk, if you want to see what they look like, go to the YouTube channel and watch that. And also, actually, real quick, I know you're in a fuck ton of different stores, but can you mention some of the different places to get the product out of?
Yeah, you can go to meatchurch.com, and I have a retail tab, and you can put in your zip code and see what's closest. But some of the big boys, I mean, in Texas, we're all over. Like Buc-ee's, Premier Grilling, barbecues galore all over the country, heavy in California. We just got in Murdoch's in the Pacific Northwest. There's 34 of those stores. We're in all Shills outdoor stores. A lot of, we really focus on specialty retail, trying not to go in like super big box stuff. So over 100 different ACE outlets. And then, directmeatchurch.com, anything you order directly from us is less than a week old always, which is like pretty crazy. Nobody does that.
Are you on Amazon also?
We are. We have a store that fulfills that for us as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good shit. All right. Again, thank you to the listener. That's where you can find the stuff. You know where you can find me. And you also know you can choke yourself. I had to throw that in there. Appreciate everybody's support. We will see you guys in the near future. Looking forward to getting the feedback on this more niche podcast. And we sure enjoy bringing you the content that we do. So without further ado, until next time, this is Mic Drop.